Good evening and welcome to this Town Council meeting of April 25th, 2024. You have before you the agenda for tonight. Are there any changes or additions that you'd like to make to this agenda?
Are we voting tonight on the, I'm sorry. You can go, you got it.
We may have, go ahead. I think we have the same question.
Are we voting tonight on the ordinance regarding the adjunct members?
No, I was just trying to provide that. So you had it, it's scheduled for the May 13th meeting.
Okay,
I just wanted to make sure you could just send me your feedback, that you had an opportunity to view it because there was some kind of interpretation of your desired modifications. And I just thought it would be easier for you all to look at what the town attorney and I prepared and let me know if there was something that was inconsistent with your direction.
Gotcha.
okay.
Okay, so we can set that piece of information, which isn't on the agenda, but was included in our packet. Jerry, was that your question as well?
No, actually, I just wanted to get clarification. So during the public hearing portion for the budget, it will be discussion only, and then the vote would be at 8:10 or.
You're talking about the budget?
Yes, for the budget ordinance. The public hearing portion is for discussion to hear from the community, and would that be the time
Yes, no,
for
that's,
council discussion as well, or just to hear from the
that's
community?
to hear from the community, because this is not scheduled for a vote tonight. This is not an action item. The ordinance, the budget.
So the language says an ordinance adopting, but
Right.
that means it's just for introduction.
Right, because the heading for it is unfinished business, so it's for discussion.
That's the title of the ordinance.
Okay, that's why I wanted to get clarification to be really clear with.
Yes.
So
Okay.
listening during the public hearing and then discussion to finalize what we're introducing. As unfinished business.
Okay, so
That's what I want to get clear.
Okay, so we had at the end of February, we had a budget session
Right.
that
And we introduced the
informed,
budget.
that informed what Bart would be putting together, that then we at the March meeting, in
We
the
did-
April meeting, we
Yeah,
introduced.
We introduced.
We
the budget.
introduced,
All
so
right.
we introduced the budget
Right,
at the April meeting. And there was a need to have continued discussion about it, which is the discussion tonight,
Right.
because it is queued up for adoption at the May meeting.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get
So,
clarification.
we're
with.
not
When will the
voting,
vote occur?
So we're
Thank
not taking a vote on this, on the 2025 budget tonight. We're discussing it tonight.
But hopefully we'll get a motion that we can then pass fairly expeditiously at the next meeting, yeah?
Yes, that's the
Hopefully, we will
goal.
come to consensus and that we will have that we will get close to making, we're not going to make decision in the sense of a vote, but I want us to get to a place where we're in agreement about what
amendments we would want.
what
to make.
amendments we want to make and what we will want to pass expeditiously at the May meeting. Yes.
Yeah, and if I may, I mean, I think one of the things we talked about at the April meeting, there was clearly a need for more discussion, and it's a lot easier for me to know what modifications you're going to want to make. Since you've already introduced the ordinance, you will need to amend it. And it's always sort of problematic when you're sitting there trying to crunch numbers on the fly. So hopefully, I'll get some direction tonight, and there'll be two versions of the ordinance in your May 13th packet, one as introduced and two reflecting your discussion tonight, so you know what amendments to make.
Okay, thank you. That's the clarification I was looking for.
Okay.
So the next meeting is May what?
13th.
Okay. Good. So I'm here, so that's good.
Yes. Okay. We're good on the agenda? Then we will consider it approved as presented. Let's now open up the forum for public comments about the proposed budget, the budget that we will be discussing later. We welcome folks from an audience, also in person as well as online. Anybody would like to make a comment? Now's the good time. Just raise your hand or come
It
on
looks
forward.
like Harry wants
Harry,
to-
okay, yes.
I think that's just the cursor.
Oh, well,
Oh, that's not her hand.
let's see.
Oh.
No. Well, welcome, Perry. All right. Well, if nobody has comments they want to make about this, then let's move on to the next item, which is the contract award for collection of refuse, recycling, yard waste, and large items. I want to, the time, by the way, is 7:38. I want to acknowledge the myriad, not the myriad, it's not the right word. There was a lot of discussion and a lot of emails sent to the town, to us, to individuals about this issue of refuse. And so I think after Kayla does her presentation, I think that it's important that we talk about this as a policy issue, that it's not just, I think there's a larger discussion to be had, taking into consideration the comments that we heard. So, Kayla, there you go.
Welcome back to those members of council and our mayor who were here last night. For those who didn't join us, thank you for being here tonight. Let's talk as a quick recap about why this service went out to bid. In 2021, a 3-year contract was awarded to Montgomery Sanitation. That contract held up pretty well for a time. However, beginning in fiscal year 2022, there started becoming a need to make multiple contract amendments. The first of those amendments was adopting a fuel surcharge when we started seeing increasingly high costs of diesel. While that was initially meant to be only a 6-month contract amendment, it was eventually adopted and extended until the expiration of the base contract awarded Montgomery Sanitation. That contract is expiring June 30th, 2024. Another contract amendment was in January 2023, when the company changed name from Montgomery Sanitation to Key Sanitation. This was caused by Montgomery Sanitation's head retiring, another member of the entity stepping up to run operations, and was mostly a straightforward paperwork update. Effective July 1, 2023, aka the start of fiscal year 2024, Montgomery County raised tipping fees for trash from $60 per ton to $70 per ton. This increase in tipping fees was not captured in the base contract price. Prior to that, Montgomery County had not raised its tipping fees for approximately 5 years. It had held steady. It didn't sound like anyone had any indication the county would consider raising tipping fees.
Can you talk a little louder?
Of course, I can do my best.
Right.
So with those tipping fees coming in increase, the head of Key Sanitation reached out to Town Manager Matthews as the contract administrator, making Barb aware of the increased fees. There was some discussion because it was a contract amendment. It had to come back to council to be awarded and authorized. You addressed this in August of 2023. Councilmember Eisenstadt, I believe that was your first council meeting. You've come a long way since then. But that was that's the most significant contract amendment to date. As reflected in the staff memo from April 8th, 2024, that led to an increase in the monthly cost of $577. Because of the timing of when this contract amendment occurred, that $577 monthly, or approximately $6,000 and change on an annual basis, please don't quote me on that number, was not captured in the household assessment fee. The household assessment fee is charged to every household in Garrett Park to equally share the burden of trash, yard waste, and recycling services costs. The base contract has the baked-in tipping fees for regular weekly collection, as well as pricing for quarterly large item collection. The only tipping fees that are not captured in the base contract are for the large item collection, because that number can fluctuate so heavily based on, quite frankly, how much Garrett Park likes their furniture and other bulky items that can easily run for tonnage. So as captured in the April 8th memo, there were 2 styles of service that were put out in the request for proposals. One was an all curbside collection for all weekly services. The other was an all rear yard, side yard collection style. As discussed in the April 8th memo, it was structured that way, both to make it practical from a financial sense, as well as to ensure that bidders were open to both styles of options. A mixed model collection where trash is collected at the rear and other services are collected curbside is highly uncommon. So again, this bid was structured intentionally to make sure that we had robust interest. And this bid was developed not because there was dissatisfaction with our current vendor. It was developed because after making the most recent contract amendment in August of 2023, the mayor and council directed staff to put it out to bid to ensure that there was continued competitive pricing, that the residents of Garrett Park were not being overcharged for an essential service. Trash, recycling, and yard waste collection is essential to not only health, but also just making town a pleasant place to live. In that staff memo from April 8th, you can see a table breaking down the received base bids. Those tables do not capture tipping fees or fuel surcharges. Given the ongoing high price of diesel, it is expected that any contract awarded will have to include fuel surcharges for the 3-year base term. As you can see, whether it be curbside or rear yard, side yard service, Ecology Incorporated turned in the lowest bid for either service style. At the April 8th meeting, there was much discussion about who in town utilizes rear yard, side yard service. A request that staff reach out to our existing hauler to get an approximate number of households that put trash to the curbside versus kept it at the rear yard or side yard. There was also a request from Councilmember Schultz that I confirm with Ecology Inc. that the weekly price for trash, yard waste, and recycling included the tipping fees, and that only the tipping fees for the quarterly large item collection would be passed on to town if Ecology is awarded. As you can see in the second attachment that accompanies the staff memo for tonight, the first sentence of the second paragraph in the letter directed to my attention from Mr. Peter Osborne states, "It is understood that tipping fees for the regular collection of trash and recycling will be paid by the contractor. Tipping fees for the bulk large item collections will be reimbursed to the contractor by town." So Councilmember Schultz.
Sorry to say, I do have a question. So we always mention trash, yard waste, and recycling. Throughout this whole thing is trash, yard waste, 3 different items. 4 when you want to include large item, but forget about. So he doesn't mention yard waste. This is Peter Osborne.
This is the very last page of the stapled password.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it took me a second just now to find it.
Second paragraph.
Second paragraph, beginning of the second paragraph
No, keep going, Lisa.
way back.
There you go, that's it right there.
It's a very short
Yard
letter.
waste is mentioned on the first paragraph.
It's right, but all I'm saying is that I just want to be,
Recycling and yard waste and rear yard collection.
These price revisions are for the curbside collection of recycling and yard waste and rear yard collection for trash. So, yeah, I think so.
I think Ecology has been responsive and clear. I am happy to confirm with Mr. Osborne again that any tipping fees or weekly collection of yard waste are baked into it.
I think, Phil, that it is covered with that second sentence. I realize the first sentence, in accordance with your request, it does say trash collection, but I think that is used as an all-encompassing. And then it's clarified by these prices are for curbside collection of recycling and yard waste and rear yard collection for trash.
That's what it says in the last sentence.
Maybe we can pass whatever.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Contingent.
that's what I was gonna
But
say. Now, the other thing, since we've kind of half brought it up, I'll bring it up. Curbside collection of recycling and yard waste, rear yard collection of trash. Why aren't they
Okay. so
collecting
understood that-
recycling? It should be recycling and trash on rear yard.
Or yard waste. It should
Or
be all
yard.
3 and all 3.
Well, I'm fine with all
Except-
3, but,
Except that that's not how it is currently.
Right, that's not how it currently.
oh, they don't, oh, we don't? Oh, I didn't realize that. I'm
It
sorry.
currently, trash, both pickups, trash is rear or side yard. And recycling is always at the curb. Is that
Okay,
correct?
fair enough.
My understanding, looking at the way my neighbors do it, those who don't bring their trash to the front, do bring their recycling to the front.
Okay,
So my understanding from the April 8th meeting was that I was too near the structure of services currently in effect with our current hauler. My understanding is recycling and yard waste were potentially added at some point to a base contract at a later date. And that is why those 2 services are the ones paired at the curbside. Whereas trash as the basis of the original contract was kept at the rear yard.
okay.
That is anecdotal information from speaking with maintenance staff members, trying to untangle how we reach the current system. It is a little murky. But I feel confident that the tipping fees for yard waste on a weekly collection basis are included in the base price of the ecology bid or the revised pricing.
And that what ecology is expecting is the same as what we have now for that in terms of location of pickup being trash and, recycling and yard waste and large item pickup at curbside and recycling and trash to that. Yes, yes. So refuse, incinerator stuff.
That's fine. Okay, I was not aware of that because I was not aware of that. I'm sorry, because most of the people around me put everything on the curb.
Yeah, I had the same observation. I've been taking it out the curb for probably like 12-ish years, and off and on the first couple of years, they were picking it up on the side and it just like stopped. So I wasn't aware that there was that disparate thing. And it sounded kind of odd when we were discussing at the previous meeting that Chevy Chase View does this setup now with the trash in the side and the back and everything else at the curb. It looks like and they're happy with this company. It looks like we're basically asking to do the exact same thing that they do on Chevy Chase View already.
Right,
with
otherwise
bigger-
known as the
bigger-
same thing we do, but with a different company.
Yeah.
So the other
So-
piece, there was another piece that we asked you to research.
So at the April 8th meeting, we have addressed that I needed to speak with the current hauler about the approximate number of households that utilize rear yard, side yard service. This conversation occurred early after the meeting, and when I spoke with the point of contact for Key Sanitation, it was an informal off-the-cuff number. I don't believe that they had data to pull to say precisely how many households in Garrett Park pulled it out. The number I was given was approximately 85% of Garrett Park households in some capacity. And it fluctuates based on weather and other factors.
What does some capacity mean?
So like sometimes.
Sometimes, so if we have, 8 collections in a month, because twice weekly, they might only put out trash to be collected 6 times, and only 2 of those 6 times might be at the rear yard.
Gotcha. So if the guys come through the truck and they don't see the can at the curbside, they go into the yard to get it and bring it out.
That is my understanding of how it plays out. Of course, if they know that someone always has it at the curbside and they don't have it out, safe assumption that they are probably traveling or otherwise being gone. Like I said, the point of contact with Q Sanitation gave this number off the cuff. I don't think they necessarily are tracking week to week precisely how many households have.
But either way, ecology is prepared to do it.
Either way, ecology is prepared to do it. Returning back to the original question about how many households use it, I also checked with the maintenance staff because they are so frequently out when trash is being collected and often have an observation perspective that is different from the vendor who is trying to move through town as quickly and efficiently as possible. The number that I got from the maintenance staff, they indicated that 85% from their observation seemed high, even if it was a number that fluctuated on a week-to-week basis. They felt comfortable saying approximately somewhere between 50 and 85% in some capacity
Use the
Okay.
side yard option.
at some point.
So it's used by a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's used by a lot of people, but
So-
it's not necessarily used by everyone consistently.
Do any of our other towns just do trash once a week rather than twice?
Several nearby communities.
Let's come back to that
Okay,
because that's a separate,
okay.
but okay, so,
So,
and what we said at the April 8th meeting was we don't want less service than we have now.
No.
So we don't want to take away the rear or side yard pickup, regardless of who's going to do it. But we
so-
wanted to know, because the original RFP asked for all or nothing. We asked for you to go back and find out a hybrid, if only some people,
Hybrid estimate.
and a hybrid estimate.
a
so that
hybrid,
we're not getting charged, I don't want to. If none of the 5 of us use the rear side yard.
Curbside
And I'll do everything curbside. I don't want
to pay for it.
them to charge us if one out, or if half of us. I don't know,
But the
that's
list was how many people who wanted.
right, absolutely. So that, and I don't think it's a question, but I also don't want them to be able to charge for the people who don't. or
Right, we didn't
least-
want to, I think what she's saying is we didn't want to pay the 100% version.
Yes,
When in fact, it's a hybrid.
It's
Yeah.
50%.
The other though,
Okay.
circling back to, I was requested to get hybrid pricing.
yep,
Because I could not give ecology an approximate solid number of how many households would utilize this. And because council had directed me to mirror what their current services is. The mixed model pricing that you have in the April 25th staff memo
Mhm.
assumes that all trash is going to be rear or side yard, and that all yard waste and recycling will be curbside for every household. in the borough. Given that no one had a concrete number, you can't exactly mix and match and say, 65 households are rear yard for all services. The remaining households are curbside. No one has tracked that number, not our current vendor, not the town staff. So that's why you see the pricing you do.
So your mixed collection model means like anybody in town, if they want to put their trash in the side yard, they can
Yes.
with this price. Okay.
Leave the
It's like
truck.
15% more than the leaving it curbside.
right. But initially, the numbers that we looked at 2 weeks ago
So
only had the 388 and the 460. You see where I'm talking about that? On the back of the first page of the packet?
the
Oh,
updated
yeah.
pricing,
Right.
the table of all three service styles at different price points.
Right.
Right.
For the 3 fiscal years of the base contract.
Right.
Those household assessment by service include the fuel surcharge estimates and the tipping fee estimates for the quarterly large item. This dollar figure that you see, whether it be 388, 427, or 460 for fiscal year 25, would be the number that would show up on your real property tax bill that you receive from Montgomery County. That is how these funds are collected, and the household assessment is designed to be a pass-through, where
Right.
it pays for the totality of service, including the fuel surcharge and tipping fees.
So what you're saying is that at the end of the day, this really isn't a charge from our budget. It's a
Correct.
pass-through.
It's a
Correct.
pass-through. It goes directly to your property bill for your home over on. Keswick.
So when we were having, during our discussion at the council meeting 2 weeks ago, one of the pieces on page 5 of this packet, page that has yellow at the top, it estimates what those tipping fees would have been based on the RFP that was submitted, which was either all curbside or all rear side yard. And what that indicated was, if it's all for rear side yard, the surcharge would be 460 for fiscal year 2025. And the paragraph above that says if it's all curbside, the assessment would have been 388. So those are the numbers that are on the second page of our packet. Are you guys following me or am I?
Yeah,
So on
This
second,
chart's the key one.
yes, so this chart on page 2 is the key one. It shows what we were presented before with the FY 2025 of curbside 388 and rear yard. So what Kayla's coming back to us with after her conversation about a hybrid of some people, of not getting charged the entire town when not the entire town uses the rear and side yard pickup. So the new number that we're looking at is $427 per resident.
I just have a question, which I think I know the answer to, but I'd like to check. It's very anecdotal. I just noticed last night I happened to be in the far corner of town driving out, and I was hearing the numbers claim for 85% of people do side and rear yard. And I noticed that it seemed to be a lot of houses I know that are residents that have been here a long time. They didn't have the trash out. People that I could tell were kind of like newer to town. I probably don't even know them, but I knew the house had changed over. They all had their trash out the curb. I think a lot of people are like me, just assume it either went away or don't know that even existed. What if a lot of people are notified, hey, you may not realize this because you've never witnessed it anywhere else you've ever lived, but you could have your trash picked up in the backyard. What if it becomes like realistically 90% of people do that? And will that 427 price still be valid, or would that be
Yes.
challenged? Okay.
That 427 is structured on the assumption that every single household in Garrett Park would keep their trash at the rear yard.
Okay.
Well, then
no,
what's the
that's not true.
460
The 460 is for both trash, recycling, and yard waste. Everything
is picked up at the
rear yard.
at the rear yard, but we don't want that,
It's up to council to determine what they want.
right?
The mixed model, to be clear, one of the three pickup,
For 100% of the people,
yes.
and the
That
other
is-
stuff they have to put on their street. Okay.
And Councilmember Sikowski, you had asked me a question late last night, early this morning. And I do want to honor your request that I share that information in the meeting.
Okay.
Councilmember Piskowski had requested that I speak with Montgomery County. A resident had approached Councilmember Piskowski with a claim that there is a county rule that if trash cans are within 55 feet of the curb, they must be fetched by the sanitation crew. I was able to get in contact today with Joe O'Donnell, who is the collections program manager for Montgomery County. So he is the one who is directly interacting with vendors to handle collection and other issues. And what Mr. O'Donnell told me today is there is no rule on the books where if a trash can is within 55 feet of the curb, it must be collected. There is nothing in the county code, particularly chapter 48, which is a chapter that deals with solid waste, that specifies any distance from the collection point that it must be picked up. That is negotiated and covered within their contracts. Mr. O'Donnell also stated that the general guidance for Montgomery County contracts is 10 feet from the curb.
What does that
Resident-
mean?
Within 10 feet of
Which means
the street.
if you have your trash can set back, let's say 5 feet, so that crazy drivers on Strathmore don't hit your
Oh.
trash,
Put it 10 feet back.
Or within.
no more than.
But like Garrett Park Estates and Kensington Estates, they both probably fall under that rule, the county rule. They have county pickup, and
Exactly.
that's what that rule is really driven for. And it sounds like our case and other jurisdictions, if we choose to have a private hauler, then it's based, those kind of things are based in the contract. So
Yes,
But
so.
yeah.
What I do want to also point out is a comment Mr. O'Donnell shared, particularly given the April 8th conversation of concern for neighbors with disability or issues taking things out to the trash. What Mr. O'Donnell stated is individuals who are serviced by the county must undergo an interview with the program in order to be granted a special exemption from the requirement to get their cans within 10 feet of the curb. That is something that it didn't sound like they have to do super frequently, but that is something that they have in place to ensure that those who truly do have issues with getting material out to the curb are able to have access to the service in a way that is appropriate.
In other words,
Right.
cheaper.
Did he tell you
But-
what percentage of the people do that?
He did not tell me what percentage in the conversation, which was pretty thorough. He did indicate that it is something that they are infrequently called upon to do. He could not recall having a conversation yet this calendar year about granting someone special exemption. He said it's been quite a while in his memory since someone has asked for an interview and been denied. But generally, once you have service, that stays with your household until you leave.
Right, but practice in the rest of Montgomery County doesn't reflect what we're doing in Garrett Park and what
Yeah,
our
we don't
residents
have to do this.
very much say. So, you know, it may not be done regularly in other places, but it is
Doesn't
done.
matter. for us.
And unless we've changed our minds, what we said at the April 8th meeting was, we want what we have now. And
Although.
because we have and because Ecology offered a lower price, we wanted to make sure that they understood that we've got this kind of weird hybrid situation going on. And so the question before us, which then we can get into
Sorry,
the conversation. Yeah.
Precision is that if the county offers trash collection, I mean, I guess the question is, you know, what would their annual charge be? What, I mean, we didn't even consider referring to the county.
That's because we've not, by ordinance, we've not opted into their, that's one of the
Well, by
services.
ordinance,
That's,
we're unable to.
We do it ourselves.
we choose to do it
We choose
ourselves.
to.
That is a conscious choice that as a town we've made.
So we have more control over it.
It's generally unincorporated areas will have the county pickups,
Mhm.
like just outside of town, east, west and south.
But you're correct. We did not
I know.
raise that as a thing. Hey, do we want to see what service would be if the county took it over? We did not.
Right, but
point
keep
out
in
to-
mind then the collection that we now take in, the fee, the assessment for that would go to the county instead of to the town if we were to opt into the county service.
And that would be set at the county budget level. That would potentially reflect less frequent service. My understanding, council may be aware, I live in Bethesda, but I live in a condo building. So we have a private contract. But my understanding is for unincorporated areas of Montgomery County, you get one trash collection
Oh, we,
per week.
right.
My understanding is having a twice weekly trash collection, even if not everyone puts something out for the second collection, is a core part of the Garrett Park setup and not something that the town is willing to step away from, as would be required to have a conversation about opting into county level trash collection.
I mean, I guess for next year, it might just be good to know what that cost is and, you know.
Well, it would be in 3 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
It would be
Base
in-
contract that you're being
Sure.
asked to award at whatever service level.
To go for 1 day a week
Just to,
pickup.
just to assess, just to evaluate, because the costs are increasing.
Right, but it is a pass through. So
It
from
is,
a
yeah.
town budget, it's not, it affects the individuals and us as individuals.
Right.
But from a town budget perspective. So if I can just ask the question of, do you guys want to put this on hold and inquire with the county about?
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
For next time, there's a.
Okay.
Right.
We will
Sorry.
make a note
There.
of that Councilmember Eisenstadt to flag it for.
And just to consider it as a shadow bidder. In other words, get the pricing for the county too, just as a baseline.
And what they would serve and what, that would be a great thing for us to flag for 3 years from now of like,
Yes.
you know, let's ask the question of what service we would get for how much?
Yes.
If we were to opt into the county trash and recycling pickup. Sorry,
Yeah.
Jerry Lee, I keep,
No, I think that was helpful to close that out. I just wanted, I'm generally in favor of moving towards a vote to go ahead and approve the mixed model version. But I did want to say that I think it's really important that when we execute on this contract, that the town office undergo a communications campaign with residents about what are the changes, what are their opportunities, if they want to change the way that they put their trash out. Let them know what those options are and how to communicate what their preference is, either with the town or with the hauler.
And what we're paying for.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
We're paying for curbside
Right, we're
twice
paying-
a week, so you don't have to take your
We're
garbage.
actually paying for
out.
side or rear yard
Paying
for the
rear yard.
trash.
Right.
they should
Members?
know that. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Before we move to acting for a vote, I am going to ask Town Manager Matthews to pull up a quick presentation. Given some of the concern on the listservs today about potentially awarding to a vendor other than our current vendor,
Right.
I did want to have some numbers in front of you all that kind of show what the household assessment would break down by vendor. Just so you can understand why ecology was recommended at either service price point. As you may recall from the April 8th memo, there were some pretty stark distances between ecology and key sanitation, which was the next lowest bidder. Looking at the April 8th memo, for curbside only service, ecology had bid $125,532. Barb, you hopped ahead of me a little bit. Sorry. Key sanitation for FY 25 had put out a base of $172,800. So not quite a full $50,000 difference for curbside only. Looking at the FY 25 rear yard, side yard only bids that came in and that were discussed on April 8th. Ecology Inc. had been $151,728. Key sanitation had been $172,800. So just under a $20,000 gap, but there is a clear gap. And that is why all of the recommendations have been to consider award to Ecology Inc.
okay, so I need to know so we have the household assessment for the mixed model, which is the 427.
Mhm.
I'm looking for, because I don't have my calculator with me, I'm looking for the number, because it doesn't matter, frankly, what all curbside and all rear side yard prices are. Those no longer you know, for us, that those are moot. So I'm looking for what the number is for what ecology will do, what the price for ecology to do exactly what Key does for us now. So what's that $100,000 number? Is that 160?
So I'm going to direct you to the second page of the April 25th memo.
Yep,
Revised ecology Inc. pricing is the heading.
great.
The total contract cost for the mixed model would be $139,932. That does not include the estimated fuel surcharges and large item tipping fees. Adding that in would take the total cost to $155,932.
Okay, so that's our number for this mixed model, the $427 per household comes out to $155,000. Correct?
$155,932 for fiscal year 25.
I thought you just said though that it was gonna be all curbside or all rear yard.
It is,
We're
but
paying for, so basically we're paying for rear yard.
Just for
okay,
trash.
Jeff
For
said,
the
Oh,
trash,
I'm
the
sorry.
original bids
All right.
were for recycling rear
So
yard
we're-
also.
All right.
I was
Thank you.
attempting to provide some clarity of
Sure.
why at the April 8th meeting, the recommendation was to go with
right.
Ecology Inc. rather than stay with.
Yeah, yeah.
okay, so the previous price for, for for ecology, that is their hybrid, so that it's not all curbside, it's not all rear yard. That price. No, that's not right.
427.
It's not it can't be 155 because that's actually more expensive.
I was about to say that.
That's without the tipping, but the tipping is the same for all of them. So you probably could look at.
So it's the
look at a
139?
$139 is the-
139,932 is the
Okay.
base contract cost without the tipping fee.
Okay, so
Correct.
that's our number. That's our number of
Correct.
comparison
Ecology.
for ecology. Our
Right.
number of comparison is ecology at 139,932. So $140,000 for the same service that we have now for Key, with Key. And Key's price for that same service is $172,800. Okay, so it is a $33,000 price difference. And I think that it's important to note that some of the comments from residents that sent around said, we know that it's more expensive to do Key, but we like Key, we know Key, they know how to do us well. And there was a sentiment that sometimes the lower price is not the right price. So
Can
I think,
ask a quick question about that. So do you know, Kayla, if the trucks that are gonna be driving down our narrow windy streets are the same size with Key and Ecology?
I do not have their truck specs in hand. What I can say is all bidders were made aware that they are responsible for having the appropriately sized equipment to do the job if they are awarded.
What
So
does that mean?
that means it's their responsibility to have trucks that are small enough to fit down our streets, but big enough to pick up everybody's trash.
Okay.
So I do want to make sure that everyone sees the brief presentation. My apologies to Councilmember Matthews for talking about it and then.
okay, good.
Oh,
All right,
folks, you can tell I have not had enough,
Just,
I haven't had enough caffeine tonight. I am suddenly awarding a seat on the council to Town Manager Matthews. But if, the next slide. As you can see here, and please note this is for curbside only service. These household assessments all have the same estimated fuel surcharge and tipping fees for the quarterly large item. It is always up to the 5 voting members to award a contract to whoever they see fit. So if you choose to go with a different vendor, I do want to make sure you see what that price could look like. That would be a price that each household in Garrett Park would pay annually. The first slide is for curbside. Town Manager Matthews, if you go to the next slide. To award rear yard to any of the vendors, as you can see. There is a pretty sharp and staggering
Wow.
distance.
Their
one?
Key is about, before it was 20% in Joanna's numbers, here it's much more than.
20%?
is that correct though? 744? I mean, I was getting
460
five,
to
I was getting 524.
That's
versus
like a
460.
4% increase.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
because they were same for, on the previous sheet. They were 172 for both.
We're 20% different than what Joanna just said.
Yeah.
Granted, it's the choice if people really, us five deciding for everyone else, but if people really do prefer key per household, it's $97 unless my math is wrong, which I hopefully it's not. It's $97 extra per household next year. Next year.
Oh,
per year.
I don't know if you have this in your presentation, Barb, but
Yeah.
I know you put a notice out on the listserv about the references you collected, and you did cover those last month in our meeting, but I don't think we've covered that tonight. Could you
Okay.
quickly review the references that you checked with
So
companies that do use ecology?
I spoke with municipalities that have used ecology. Many of them have been so pleased with the service that they have either awarded contract extensions or were in the process of doing so when I spoke with them. In the April 8th memo, I did highlight that ecology is currently the hauler for the town of Chevy Chase View, the town of Kensington, the city of Taneytown, and the city of Westminster.
Are all of those three much larger, have a lot more houses than Garrett Park?
Not significantly more. Taneytown is Tawnytown. You can tell I'm from out of,
Tawny,
my apologies for that Pennsylvania pronunciation. You can tell you imported me from out of state. But Tawnytown is approximately 7,000 people. Chevy Chase View, I believe, is smaller than us, and Kensington is 3,000 individuals.
Double ones.
It's a lot bigger.
So a lot bigger, but not astronomically huge. These are not, city of Rockville vendors. These are not Gaithersburg vendors. Ecology drew high praise for being responsive, for ensuring smooth transitions. I do want to highlight that both Chevy Chase View and Kensington had to transition to Ecology Inc. rather abruptly when their previous hauler entirely exited the municipal solid waste collection market. So they have gotten high praise for being efficient, effective. They have been responsive and engaging. I can say that in the course of having to reach out to them for clarification as requested by Councilmember Scholl, as well as following up on mixed model pricing and council direction, they have been prompt, professional, and willing to communicate and work.
How many years have we used Key or whoever they were before Key?
They were Montgomery Sanitation before they were Key. I would have to look at the contract
Several
document.
contracts.
Multiple. Multiple contracts is my understanding. I would have to have the documents in front of me to say when they were truly initially awarded. And I,
It could be
And I'm
like 10 or
sorry,
12
I'm
years.
thinking 10 or 12 years,
it's
yeah.
been at least that long.
Just a comment that I think I was misreading the numbers. It's about 20%, right? The same 20% difference between the providers. And so, I mean, I would like to make a motion that we go with ecology because it saves 20%. Indeed, there are some vocal proponents of key sanitation, but the vocal ones are always the ones on the listserv, so we don't really have a true measure.
We are also,
of what Many
right,
people think.
right.
Only
It's
what a few
less
think.
than 10
And
people,
I think
really.
if it's defensible for the town council to make this switch because it's gonna save everybody in the town money.
So is there a way, Barb?
So can we second it?
I would
So we're-
second that motion.
But that's curbside. I think we're all talking about doing
No,
the
but
hybrid.
it's-
Yeah.
The mixed
Yeah.
use,
me, Mayor and Council,
the mix.
Town Manager Matthews and I realized that I made an error transcribing the key sanitation assessment. That should be consistent across both slides. It is not. You have my sincere apologies.
Where are you?
It's still 20%.
It's still 20%.
Okay,
So
so,
curbside numbers should be reflected in key sanitation for the rear. yard.
right,
So it is
but
still,
so the all or nothing numbers are not really valuable to us because,
We're not doing
because
it.
that's not what we're doing.
Right.
Barb. So if we were to switch, if we vote to switch to ecology, there will be a curve, a learning curve. It'll take a while it might take a little while for a new hauler to get to know our system, be like, oh yeah, I need to go to that house, or I don't see it here, I'm gonna walk around, like to learn how to do this. So there might be a ramp up period, and so that could be a little awkward. is there a way that we can build in some sort of insurance? I don't know that there is. Some sort of insurance that like, hey, guys, we wanted to switch to you because you said you were gonna be able to do the very same thing we're doing. You're not giving us the service that we contracted for. And like, how can we guarantee that, yes, there's gonna be sort of a painful there could be a painful transition if we go with ecology. But if it turns into more than just a little bit of a painful transition.
I think if that is a concern, then Kayla and I can address that with the town attorney. I mean, clearly, any contract has an out clause. Obviously, we have our town attorney write contracts that have provisions that benefit us. As Kayla mentioned, both Kensington and Chevy Chase Village went through transitions. They had the same hauler who decided to exit the municipal trash market. I've known the former Chevy Chase Village manager for about 20 years. I asked her specifically, how did their transition go? Because I think anytime you transition from a hauler who you've been with a long time, you do worry about bumps in that. She indicated that it went very smoothly. There were no issues, and I think Kayla may have mentioned this in her staff report from April. The former town manager in Chevy Chase View was there for 34 years. She's also a resident of the town. During that 34 years, she worked with 4 haulers, and she described ecology as the best of the 4 she had worked with.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I took some comfort in that too, as someone who is went through a transition, had multiple experience with multiple vendors, and was able to provide that glowing of a reference.
Okay. So Todd, I hear your motion.
Yes.
If I can ask you to hold it for a moment, because I want to make a very clear, statement or a question to you all. There is the apples to apples comparison is $139,000, basically $140,000 versus $172,000. Okay,
Correct.
that's the comparison. Okay, it's a $32,000 difference
To maintain what we do
to maintain,
currently,
but with
Same service,
same
different
service,
vendor.
different vendor.
Right.
Okay.
but
there-
the ability for all residents to know and take
Yes,
advantage too.
right.
So,
Tell everybody, you don't
That's
have to
on the
bring your
record.
trash to the
Right.
curb anymore.
Okay,
It's about 20%.
so,
it's about 50 or 60.
but it's
Yeah.
$32,000.
Yeah.
There are folks in town today, we heard from them, yes, it was maybe just a vocal few, but I want to be really clear. They are saying it's okay with us to charge or to go with the more expensive option. We are willing to pay for the more expensive option because it's the known entity, it's the known experience, and we want to maintain that. So the question in voting, in casting a vote on Todd's motion about whether to go with ecology, I want it to be really clear that we are saying, yeah, we hear you. We're gonna do everything we can to ensure that service stays exactly as it is, just with new
Yes.
people. And we don't agree as a council that we should spend an additional $32,000
On a bill of
to stay
50
or
70,000.
just to maintain what we've always had, because we've had. it.
We're making an educated guess that ecology, which has good references from surrounding communities, which we know and trust, is going to provide the same high level of service here that we've received from Key Sanitation.
For $32,000 a year less.
Yes.
And we've made note that we want that there to be a clear exit strategy if we need to do that, if we need to,
If
Pull
their
the hat.
trucks are too big and they start smashing up our town.
or whatever it is.
Right.
Okay, so does anybody else have anything or, okay, I remove my request. Todd made a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so this is the motion to approve ecology as the
With
the contract,
Mixed model pickup, mixed collection model
mixed collection model,
of ecology.
Yeah, so trash on the side or the rear and everything else at the curb.
correct?
With
We're gonna
listening.
send announcement to everybody in the town to say you don't have to bring your trash to the curbside anymore.
But you do have to bring your recycling in your.
Right,
office.
just as you always have.
Okay,
Before,
can we vote?
hang on. Because remember, we both agreed on an amendment to this thing, which was going to be contingent on them verifying that the yard waste was
Oh, yeah.
included in the tipping fee. And I will,
getting all of this.
Okay,
And can I also suggest too that we remove that or they redo that last page, the same sentence, first sentence, last paragraph for regular collection, tipping fees are paid in addition to flat collection fee. We just get rid of that so that it's not ambiguous.
I'm not following you.
I'm looking at the very last page of the agenda
Exhibit
packet item,
6.
the note, it is understood. That is what you would like to see removed, am I correct?
But I understand that, but I'm just saying it's contradictory. The two of them are contradictory.
Oh, you're referring to this,
That's
okay.
dumb first sentence.
Thank you for clarifying which paragraph you are on. I will ask them to remove that and.
This is under note, right?
So that-
No, I'm sorry,
The note
folks. I-
should be
the
retained, but
notes,
the paragraph above it should be removed.
the first, right. Oh,
I will
that,
ask-
I'm done.
For regular collection, tipping fees are paid in addition to the first flat collection fee.
Yeah, because,
Right.
You're saying it's
The note is
redundant, so,
contradiction.
right.
no, I'm saying that it contradicts the note, which says that, it contradicts the note down below it.
It says tipping fees for bulk large item collections will be reimbursed to the contractor by the town.
Right, but it says it is understood,
It's included.
it's
And then
included, and up
under
here,
sentence, it's not.
right,
Yeah, you're saying
So-
let the bottom part stand for.
exactly, just so we're all clear.
You got that, Kayla?
I got that.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
can we call the questions?
Can I ask one real quick question? Just if we do hit a couple speed bumps when this company transitions, is it realistic versus residents calling that company directly and trying to explain where they live and what's going on? Is it possible we can have like a collection of that through the town office to kind of be able to give them a sheet to say, we got comments from these 14 residents. Can you please take care of this next time around? Like, I wonder if that'd be more efficient, if that's realistic.
I can't speak to the efficiency because my understanding is for at least the past several years, everyone's been directed to go to the current hauler.
Mhm.
But if that is how council wants to handle complaints moving forward, we will update the language as part of the publicity campaign. We will make sure everyone knows, call your friendly town office and we will work with ecology to make right whatever concern you have. Is that how council wants to approach it, or would you prefer that residents continue to go directly to the hauler?
I'd rather they go directly to the hauler, but I'd also want for us to know what it is. Like, I mean, I want them, like, I want.
Would
both of
it
them.
be satisfactory to council to request that ecology provide a report to staff on a monthly basis of any complaints, questions, or concerns they received?
If you think they'll do the truth.
I think they have such glowing references that I don't think they would lie or falsify.
Okay.
Or if there's problems, and they're big enough.
We'll hear about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're
So
gonna
maybe we
call
should
it.
just let it go with that.
Yeah, maybe if you don't get a response after calling them, then go to the town office, not go every time. So,
Okay.
Because we don't need to have work to your load.
Yeah, I think getting a report from them would be a good idea. And I also think we should say that when we announce the awarding of this, that they don't have to bring their trash to the curbside anymore twice a week. It's included in the contract, and if they have problems, they should call this ecology, and
Right.
ecology is gonna tell us a report every month of problems. I would say all that to the town.
I will keep that as part of the publicity package. As a reminder, when you authorize the contract award tonight, we do still actually have to nail down the actual legally binding contract. So I would.
Well, whenever the right time is to say.
So
We
is,
will make sure it is
Right.
publicized early and
Right.
often. I just don't want you all to think that there's going to be a memo
Tomorrow.
blasting out of the listserv tomorrow
Right.
morning.
That's fine.
so is this decision authorization for, once the language is hammered out, for me to sign it? It's not, it won't be
Yes.
coming back to us.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
We're
Yeah.
done.
the trash
So-
out.
So now,
done with trash.
so we've got a motion, I didn't know, I don't know.
Second. I second. that.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the contract, awarding the contract, as amended to ecology?
Aye.
Next modality.
Right.
Right.
Okay, that was everybody.
Okay,
Yep.
Okay.
right.
Time is 8:27. And we are moving on to our continued discussion about the 2025 fiscal year, the budget. And yep. Yes. Okay, so Ms. Matthews, if you could get this started for us, we would appreciate that.
Certainly, as was discussed at the beginning of the meeting, you introduced ordinance number 2024-4 at your meeting on April 8th. Before the conclusion of that meeting, you agreed that you would have a follow-up meeting to iron out some issues that you all needed further deliberations on. There were some follow-up, some items that were raised during your discussion on April 8th. Specifically, there were some questions about the spending from year to year and IT operations, as well as some questions just about prior year carryover calculations. Those matters are addressed in the staff memo. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Also, I did want to call out that included in tonight's agenda packet in attachment 2, there is a revised capital budget sheet for your review. As I was kind of reviewing matters following the April 8th meeting, one of the things I noticed, which was a data entry error on my part, I apologize for that, is that the funding increment shown for the Yandell Park Creation Project, which is account 29.1.1.
What number?
It was, it's attachment 2, but the account number is 29.1.1 in the capital budget page. I mistakenly entered the full cost of the expenditure in FY 2025 as the increment as well. That basically did not take into account that there was funding that will remain as of June 30th, 2024, which is the end of this fiscal year. Once that data entry error was corrected, it reduced the supplemental funding that was needed for that account from $286,436 to $241,202. With that additional funding increment, whatever you'd like to call it, being corrected, that also reduced the amount that needs to be taken from the capital contingency account, which is account 33.0. The ordinance as introduced anticipated a allocation from the capital contingency account in the amount of $67,197. That was then reduced to $14,260. Also, and I think we had talked about this actually at your work session at the end of February. Currently, we have $55,000 that is in account 32.1, which is capital planning / town hall, as we discussed at your work session on February 28th. I think we're sort of way past what is typically considered a feasibility study. So in attachment 2, I was proposing that $55,000 in funding be transferred from account 27.2 town hall, basically just to recognize where we are at this time with the project. Also, as a follow-up to your April 8th meeting, discussing kind of how we can help things move along with the mayor. She had asked me to create what I'm going to refer to as sort of a shorthand guide that links the capital budget as well as the kind of newly created capital improvement program. That is attachment 3 in your agenda packet.
It's the folded one.
Yeah, it's a longer one. There are also some notes. So hopefully I was just trying to basically show you what was being added in funding or proposed to be added for funding for FY 2025. What that meant in terms of total funding that would be available in FY 2025. What were the anticipated expenditures in FY 2025 and what, if anything, would be left in the individual accounts. So I guess with that introduction, I'd be happy to answer any questions or send it back to the mayor.
Okay, so just so the questions kind of go in the right place. The way that I want to structure our conversation about the capital budget is in relation to this folded piece. This is kind of our, not our guidepost, but this is the thing that I'm using. So if you have questions about things other than the capital budget, then that would be Barb. And the capital budget, I'll take over after that.
Yeah, I had one question, Barb. So there's a number of new houses, including the one I'm building, but the one on the Siegel House on Waverly and the Perry's house, and there's a number of new houses that are being sold or will be assessed at a much higher value. Are those numbers reflected in the revenue side of the budget?
The assessments are basically are done by the state.
Right.
So it's done through the Maryland Department of Assessments and Taxation. When they provided with what is referred to as the constant yield, tax rate certification, and I can certainly send that to all of you. There are certain assumptions that are made in terms of improvements that will come online.
But they just make a gross assumption about.
They have to make
current-
some assumptions. I
Right.
don't think it's at the granular level of each and every house. They also make assumptions. Particularly when you've gone through a cycle of reassessment, people have the opportunity to protest their new assessment
Right.
and appeal it. They also make certain assumptions of which of those appeals might be successful.
Right, but I'm talking about like houses that are built on vacant property as an
Right.
example.
That's all handled through that. So basically, yes, our estimates are based on the data that we get from the Maryland Department. of
So it's their
Assessment and
assumption.
Taxation.
And those assessments don't change instantly. It takes several
Correct.
years.
3 years.
Correct.
3
Right.
years at least, yeah.
It's gonna take a couple years for the, 5 new houses to
Right,
take effect.
but there will be more money coming down the road as
Yeah,
well.
so just as a reminder, all the property in Garrett Park was assessed in calendar year 2023. The values were set as of January 1st of 2024, and then for taxation purposes, it goes into effect July 1st of 2024. Under Maryland law, any increase in assessment, basically stays dead for 3 years.
Right,
So there's a number of factors that are.
so we're not
coming
gonna
into play.
see it for 3 more years. The new houses,
It depends on where
where they were.
where
in the
those houses
process.
were in terms
Right,
of construction. Some are in
Lucky you.
different
right,
stages.
right. Okay, thank you.
There was a question put to us, by a resident about, we started to have this discussion, April 8th, but I just want to sort of bring it up again, and that is a question about the, line item for local income tax revenue, so not related to capital budget.
Right.
But income tax revenue, Barb's level is, set at, $550,000 was her suggestion. And that is,
A big chunk.
it's a big chunk. It is lower than it's been in previous years, which we've talked about extensively, how that is in part because of the way taxes were collected and reporting during COVID. And she chose that number. Ken Schwartz recommended a different number, says that the 550,000 is too conservative. I don't have a vote, so it doesn't matter, but I will share that it doesn't bother me that if we're being conservative, I would rather get a windfall than
And
overestimate.
be wrong, right.
So,
Agreed.
And I would just say at your places, because at your April 8th meeting, I wasn't very successful in showing the kind of chronology of income tax receipts by month because it was just too small.
Right,
That is at your place at the dais if you want to see that, but that'll basically show the month-to-month collections dating back to FY 2019. But as the mayor is alluding to, the largest single factor this fiscal year is an almost $300,000 reconciling payment that basically ties back to tax year 2022 and the fourth quarter. This is the largest reconciling payment, as you all talked about at the meeting at the end of February. That one reconciling payment alone is almost as much as we've received in some entire fiscal years. The extended filing deadlines at the state level, without penalty have now passed. That doesn't mean that there's not still some tax filers who haven't filed, but they will be facing penalties. But what the state had clearly indicated, has been for some time, is that since there were no penalties for taking advantage of the extended filing deadlines, many people did.
right.
And so income taxes are very difficult to discern patterns with, and if you look at this chart, you can clearly see that. That has become very difficult with some of the things that happened during the pandemic.
But you're comfortable with the number.
As I indicated in my transmittal message, it may prove to be conservative, but I would rather you base spending on an estimate that is more conservative than base your spending on something that doesn't materialize.
Right.
okay, so,
One other quick question, informational question, as we prepare to consider allocation of the budget. it has been stated by, maybe it was Ken and others, that there's a 22% increase this year in the operating budget.
hold on a second. I want to finish that thought, the thought about,
Okay.
about the revenue,
Oh,
the income
sorry.
tax revenue.
Okay.
Is everybody, or is, what number would you like to go with for this line item, our income tax revenue? Do you want to go with Barb's recommended $550,000, or would you like to do something different?
No, it's 550. I thought it was 530. Okay, let's do 550.
550.
You want to
Yeah.
vote?
I don't think we need to vote. I want it to be, I want us,
I'm fine with it.
Thought it was 530 and I was gonna suggest 550 just to
Okay.
stop having this discussion.
Bill?
550.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
okay with 550.
all right, so we're affirmed that we're sticking with the, in the thoughtful analysis that Barb put into it, and we're good with that. Okay. Okay, so now, sorry, you were
So,
talking
yeah,
about,
just this other general question to be raised, to see if you could explain a little bit.
Yeah,
So we
I've
can-
not spoken to Mr. Schwartz about it, but when he brought this up, I believe it may have even been your March meeting. I just, truthfully, while you all were talking, did some back of the envelope calculations. It appears to me that what he looked at was the end of the year expense figure for FY 2023, so actual spending. Which, as it noted in your agenda packet for FY 2023, and there were a variety of reasons why, which I kind of recapped from my report for the final, monthly financial report for FY 2023. So expenses came in low. It appears that based on, because I came out to pretty much the exact same number he did, is he was basically comparing actual expenditures for FY 2023, which came in under budget, and basically compared that to the adopted expense budget as it stands today for FY 2024.
Where we've hired some more people.
correct.
Correct. I mean, but,
I bought a pickup truck.
well, that's on the capital side.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
but salary.
Oh, salad. Okay.
Yeah, so there's things like salaries, and one of the things, if you look at, and I'm going off memory
Barb,
here.
The trees, parks and grounds is considerably higher in the, isn't that a major
2024.
portion of that?
In 2024 compared to FY 2023, Carolyn.
Or 2025.
Oh,
So we're not talking 20.
I'm sorry, I was looking at 25.
No, but actually, Jerry, you would probably be correct, because one of the things, if you recall, in FY 2023 that we had hoped would be done is that we would be through the Strathmore MOU process with SHA. So that was, that 20-some thousand didn't get spent. If you're looking at end of the year expenditures for FY 2023 compared to current adopted for FY 2024, we did not expend any of the contingency funds for FY 2023, the $40,000. As I indicated in my carryover number, I don't expect that we will expend any of the $40,000 in operating contingency in FY 2024, but as the budget stands today, you're comparing a zero number closeout for FY 23 to a $40,000 number in FY 2024 as budgeted.
But not spent.
Correct.
Right.
We had a, employee who went part-time in FY 2023. The position had been budgeted at full-time. So there's a whole series of
Right.
reasons, but those are some of the ones.
There's no standout reason with regard to increasingly opulent spending. I mean, I couldn't find it. I looked.
So the big difference is that we have an
People.
assistant town manager.
Right.
So that is a policy decision we made that has the budget implication.
And we have a third
We have
maintenance
Kayla in
person.
FY 2023 too.
Right, but we also transitioned out some contract staff at the
We
same
did.
time.
Yeah.
Mhm. So Barb, I just wanted to make sure though that in the FY 24 amended for trees, parks and grounds
Yes.
was 176 and the prior year was 110 actuals. So I just wanted to, I think, was that based on what you just now explained? We hadn't yet made the decision to the move of trees out of the capital budget is only in 25. We hadn't yet done that in our amended 24, correct?
That's correct. I'm trying to think, we also had, in FY 2024, that was sort of unique, was the cleanup of the Grotto property,
Right.
which was roughly $20,000. If you'd like to view, I.
And then there's the MOU that we are hoping to still
We are hoping-
execute on that
yes,
this year.
We are very close. There was everything is well drafted for the mayor's signature. I did a final review with Ron Bolt, who thought that the state may have incorrectly worded some of the indemnification clause language. Ron provided me language that has gone back to the state. It is now circulating through their legal counsel. They are hopeful they might actually get something to me by tomorrow. And we do have, Phil Normandy is in the process of preparing a list to get pricing from one of our contracted tree providers. As of now, at least, if we're able to get the MOU wrapped up fairly soon, Bartlett believes that they can actually do the pruning work on Strathmore by June 30th. So those funds are anticipated to be expended.
Okay, thank you, because I think that helps explain a huge difference, because that's 66,000 between 23 and 24 as amended, and between 24 amended and the proposed 25, it's a $51,000 difference. So, okay, thank you.
It seems a little bit more easily tracked than it was. I guess it was like 4 years ago, maybe 5, that I was kind of questioning, I was directly questioning, like pretty sharp increases in operating budget. And I think something I asked for then, which I think could be still useful to us for like the next budget cycle, is to see, is there a way when you do the presentation for every year to kind of show going back over the years, adjusted maybe for inflation, like to see how much the anticipated revenues are either climbing or staying flat, and kind of show all those in comparison, so we can kind of see, are they just rising with
Yeah.
inflation, or is it, if it's spiking up, or if it's settling off, and kind of like Jerry Lee was saying, like there could be some really clear things to kind of see in the timeline what is causing it.
Oh, but to see it in graphic form.
Yeah, I
as
think it'd be
opposed
good to
just
see
the
it, yeah, going
numbers.
back, so if it's kind of steady purposely for 10-ish years or 5-ish years, we'd be able to see it. But if there's something purposely changing that, we kind of know. Because I think a lot of that, and that was my point then, is that we want to be as efficient as we can on the operating budget so we can maximize the capital budget, which I'm sure we'd all kind of agree with, but.
Yeah,
Oh.
I think following up just on Jerry Lee's comment, and I can probably even pull it up in my email, because I had emailed some data to Sean Connell, the chair of the Arboretum Committee, as they were preparing their recommendation. I've been on the town staff since the late November of 2021. And certainly, I think if you go back and look historically, and I know it's a little difficult when you're just looking at sort of the rolled up accounts, but the town has made considerably more investment in the Arboretum and tree health and tree pruning activities. And that doesn't come cheap. It's an investment in the Arboretum, but we certainly are spending more money than we would have spent in FY20, FY21.
Are there any other non-capital questions or things that we need to discuss? Or are we,
No, I guess the only other thing that
to your mic?
I keep looking for filling the gap between what is projected for renovation of the town hall and what revenue sources we have. And I met with Barb, and I think there are some other sources potentially, like the black market lease and the renting of this front space of the office, and
I
You
think
know-
that's a different discussion.
okay.
Yeah.
I
that's
think
fine.
that's something that we need to address.
Just a couple
Please, yeah.
comments, so, and this was in the memo, but, I do want to mention this, obviously, as we get closer to your adopting the budget, I will do another review, basically, of going back through expenses, going back through revenues. One of the things I had shared with you a while back is that in consultation with Mary Recchi, our accountant, we had basically done a fairly detailed cash flow analysis, around the beginning of the year, and made the decision to move some funds to the Montgomery County investment pool. Last week, I basically received the third quarter statement, and in that one quarter alone, we received over $12,000 in investment income.
Mutual fund or something?
It
Just
just
hides
basically,
it.
by Montgomery County, they're the ones with the investments. You're actually, you are restricted in what you can do with governmental funds, but I want to go back, kind of look at, even just the projections for this year. Getting over $12,000 from one investment source for one quarter is pretty staggering. I mean, good news. To Lisa's comment, just to bring you up to date, Joanne and I have been in discussion. We'll have some further conversation early next week. We are at the point with our lease renegotiation with Black Market. Their lease is up in the middle of June. We have exchanged proposals. We have some further discussion that needs to take place, but I'm hopeful that by the time we get to your adoption on May 13th, that we have, I hope to have the lease actually on your agenda for approval. As I indicated when we talked about the budget earlier this month, I thought it was inappropriate for me to make any assumptions about where we would land and let's factor that revenue in without the courtesy of Ms. Black and I being in agreement of what we
Right.
should bring forward. The other thing Joanna may want to share is basically what happened at the Government Operations Committee at the County Council.
Oh, was that proposed testimony or did that get finalized?
Well, just basically what.
Okay,
Councilmember
so
Stewart's office is
the-
hoping to achieve.
So the
anyway.
GO committee is the council president, Andrew Friedson, council vice president, Kate Stewart, who is our county councilwoman, and Sydney Katz. They're the GO committee, that is government operations. And they heard our request for reimbursement of funds that we spend on maintenance of our parks. And while we spend upwards of $100,000 or something, that's sort of called Barbara's done the calculations. At this point, they're not going to say, here's $100,000, but they are recommending that council put in, I think it was $29,000.
Yeah, so as you well know, may add on to this, Joanna. So the original tax duplication payments for park maintenance date back to the 80s, and there were a set number of municipalities whose residents pay the metropolitan tax that have been receiving payments since that time. What has happened is they've just adjusted it by inflation and nobody even knows what the formula is. So we have been caught up in sort of a bit of a bureaucratic nightmare because under the county code, we do have the right to petition for a new payment and we have for the 2 years running. For the second year, which was November of 2023, the county executive's office and the Office of Management and Budget basically asked me to put together kind of a detailed spreadsheet at their urging. They also said, you may be setting aside money for future capital improvements, include that in your analysis. We're still kind of stymied. I think Joanna and I had a call with Councilmember Stewart's staff on Monday, I think it was. Basically just indicating that they were trying to keep things as streamlined and kind of clean as possible to avoid any needless debate. And they're basically picking up the staff cost or our own staff cost that I had included in that analysis and sent to the Office of Management and Budget.
And that's
So
the
that-
29
so
grand.
that-
Getting to the issue that Lisa raised, which I think is a great issue about the gap in the town hall, given that that's the biggest capital expenditure and the most contentious one, I wonder if we could start with that and figure out if we can agree on the level of funding that we think is appropriate based on what we have now, and that will show us what's left for the other projects.
I think that's what that's for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
Right, but
wanna-
we do need to wrap up the operating budget first.
Right.
Yeah.
I did have one more question about the operating budget. So the number that's currently there for refuse collection, is that based on
It was
which
ba-
version?
It was originally based on, because we assumed curbside collection, obviously in light of your decision earlier this evening. That number will change both on the revenue side and on the expense side since it's.
So let's go.
So it will balance out,
It
but
balance
it's
out.
not
Okay.
currently
It's not
correct.
currently
Okay.
accurate, yes.
So question, you said they granted us like 29,000 or something?
That's what
They're hoping.
They're proposing, I'm sorry, proposing.
Estimated.
So, but that is only for staff time, so it doesn't take into consideration other elements of the maintenance that we do. So we will, as we've been for the last year and a half, 2 years, trying to get the full reimbursement. We're going to continue those conversations in hopes that we can get it kind of codified for future years where we get closer to what our actual spending is
Okay.
for what we're taxed for. Sorry, so go ahead, yes.
So so we're not necessarily stuck with that number, if you will. We're gonna continue to work on the,
Yes.
Okay.
And that
Okay.
number of 29,000 is nowhere in this budget.
Right.
right, no, I didn't figure because it just said it was
Nor-
proposing.
Nor is the black market increase in the
Correct.
rent. I mean,
No.
there's a lot of things that aren't in here that we
Yeah,
could.
I'm
see.
certainly hopeful that, like I said, I think just given timing, we have already started, the lease that exists today for Black Market was obviously written at a time when the restaurant space was being you know, there was a tenant fit out and all this kind of stuff. I think now that they have been operating for 20 years, we're actually crafting a new lease, obviously with legal counsel, for you all to take a look at, hopefully at your May 13th meeting, just to bring everything more up to date in terms of an existing operation, you know, and focusing more on what happens if the restaurant, you know, ever decides to close. And there are certain closeout things that happen when you have a tenant leave.
But that is something that we would be essentially the crossover between adopting the budget and that happening. You know, basically, this would be something that would be teed up for a budget amendment down the road
Well,
to add that revenue in
The
there if we
mid-year.
wanted to allocate it or
yeah,
whatever. we
here's
wanted
what I would say, John,
But-
if the lease, if we're at a point, hopefully that the lease is on your May 13th agenda, for your approval, you know, and you're gonna have to amend the budget
Later.
proposal as introduced anyway, for trash, or
Mhm.
maybe decisions you make this evening or any other adjustments, you know, just doing, I do one more pass through. If we're at a point where the leases things have stopped moving by May 13th, and you're gonna have to amend anyway, what I will likely do, is there, as I indicated before, there would be one version of the ordinance as introduced, another version of the ordinance with proposed amendments, because you are going to have to kind of vote those in. But I do think it's feasible that the black market lease change might be able to be picked up before you adopt the budget ordinance. I don't know what exactly the county cycle is, so we'll just have to wait and see where they are in their own process. As Diana said, if they have not resolved a possible park maintenance payment to Garrett Park, then that could always be recognized later through the budget amendment.
But, okay, sorry, Jared, go ahead.
One more question. I know I asked this at the last meeting, but I just want to make sure for the record, we're clear. IT operations, we had a big increase in order to deal with some remedial issues to be in compliance with state requirements. What percentage of that is a one-time bringing it up to speed versus, and what percentage will be our new normal for FY 26 and beyond?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and one thing dearly that I would just say is obviously IT expenses are going to vary for a number of reasons. So, for example, in the latter part of 2023 and into 2024, there were a lot of consulting time, conversation time between our IT consultant and myself, trying to unravel the state requirements and figure out where we were at from a compliance standpoint, where we needed to be. Equipment, hardware purchases will vary from year to year. But when you look at the FY 2025 proposed IT budget, approximately 30 to 40% of that are one-time costs, basically to comply with it's a Senate bill basically dealing with cybersecurity, and also kind of a move to the cloud. There's different ways. One of the concerns I have had since I've been with the town is that, you know, we certainly have things that are backed up, you know, through our consulting firm. If we ever had an incident, something happened with the building and the server itself was physically destroyed, there is a rebuilding process which takes time. We are very reliant at this point on electronic records. Generally, the way not only governmental entities but private companies do it is you have one of two ways. You either have a virtual server that's mirroring, or you also sometimes use tapes to back up, and then you store them at some place. Yeah, actual data tapes that basically you'll see trucks like Ironman. And there's a pickup basically, so it limits, you know, what the recovery time is. So that's part of just general disaster preparedness practices. Our IT consultant and I talked about a number of ways to handle it. We sort of started, do we just do tape backups and have them picked up, and what the frequency of that would be?
About a class.
That's what we're actually moving to. We're actually, some of the costs here are basically essentially to move to a virtual server environment. That does not mean you don't have hardware still on site, but it is a different level of hardware that's on site.
So you say an estimated 30% of the proposed expenditures. How much is that for
Okay.
FY 2025?
So what we had for actual expenses in 23 was under 50,000. And what is being proposed for 25 is 110,000.
Okay,
And what she's saying is that 35 to 45,000 of that
for the
110
one-time.
is related to these one-time expenses. So the new normal, Jerry, it has indeed gone up in the last, in 2020. So 5 years ago, our IT budget was at 27,000, and now we're looking at it,
Right.
the new normal being closer to 60 or 65.
Yeah, and I mean, just a couple items. This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but this was in my original budget transmittal message. Among the items that are included in the FY 2025 budget proposal are a third-party security assessment, which is one of the state cybersecurity mandates and just good best practices. That's roughly 9,500. There are certain security remediation activities which, once again, are tied to going through each of the provisions of the mandates of the State Cybersecurity Act for governments. That's about 14.4. And then there's also kind of managed security services, which are roughly about $10,000.
And we hired somebody to do some of this work, didn't we?
Yes, that's,
Yeah,
Right, so there's an increase in salaries too.
so does that
no,
answer?
no, we have not hired a staff person to do IT work.
I thought we hired somebody to
No.
be in compliance with this.
No, that's record keeping. That's different. Record
Yeah.
keeping.
Record
That's
keeping,
correct. That's-
right.
That's basically our state archives requirements. So what you may be thinking of, Lisa, is starting in FY 23, I believe.
No, where she's talking about Jeanette.
Okay, Jeanette, yes, I'm sorry, from a staffing standpoint, that's correct. There's also an investment we have made basically for record retention for basically legal compliance purposes, if we ever got into a lawsuit. And that's what the company called Smarsh that does basically kind of data archiving, essentially.
So Jerry, does
Thank
that
you. Yeah,
answer?
that answered my question.
You found the
So-
new normal, okay.
Will we still maintain a server, or is it all gonna be just totally the cloud?
There is actually, when you have a virtual server, I think sometimes people think that means you don't actually have any hardware that is on site. You still have hardware on site, but it is not the same level of hardware. And then you have a virtual server. So sometimes those concepts get confused. You do actually still have equipment on site, but it will-
And the virtual server has some redundancy and it's backed up in more than
Yeah, I
one
mean,
place.
right. I mean, it obviously also kind of leverages, I think we're going with a Microsoft,
Right.
server. As our IT consultant, and I said, if we ever have a problem where Microsoft gets taken out, the whole world has a lot more problems.
Right.
But that we just deem that to be probably a better way of handling things. You may have seen in the capital budget, we did not have significant funding tied to IT that was ever in the capital budget. There were things like a website, which isn't a capital expense. But I had proposed transferring the money that was currently in the capital budget, zeroing it out for a server. So what happens when you tend to move to a virtual server environment is things that basically at one time were capital expenses become operational expenses. Just by the very nature of what you're buying, leasing.
That's helpful too.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else operational?
I guess the only other thing is potential additional revenue for the office in the front of the Penn Place that we might be able to rent. That's not reflected in
Not
the
at all.
budget at all.
No,
Yeah, I
we're
mean,
not,
yeah,
we're
right-
not in a position to be able to do that.
Not at all. Right now, as I emailed you all earlier this week, we are finally out of Department of Permitting Services purgatory. Thankfully, we have, our general contractor, as might be know, is a town resident. As soon as he knew we had the permits, which I believe was Monday, I think he notified me Monday night. We are now kind of in the process of having to fit in with other jobs he's taken on, but a crew was on site on Tuesday. Basically stocking the job, doing framing work. They were pulled off to go someplace else Wednesday and Thursday. He came by today. We're hopeful to have the plumber and the electrician in at some point next week. We are probably, just to give you an idea of timing, since you all are interested in tenant space B, which is kind of where we're sticking everything right now. We're probably about roughly 4 weeks out to the point that they need to start doing work in the existing town office. They have painted. But at some point, we are going to actually need to move the server out. It really doesn't do well when you have, it's in Kayla's office. There's a large, crack in the wall that will need to basically be sanded out. They're gonna be refinishing all the floors, which are in pretty rough shape. Servers and basically flying pieces of wood don't do well. So there will be a point in time, about roughly 4 weeks out, where we will need to basically vacate the existing town office space, all kind of crowd into tenant space B. And then wait for that work to be done and then wait for the equipment to be moved back in.
But it's not something, renting out space
Yeah,
B is
that's-
not something that we've forgotten about.
Right.
It's
Okay.
just not yet, and it's not.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, we couldn't function right now if we didn't have that to use as
Right.
temporary space.
from a budget perspective. So anything else operational? Okay,
Can I just, I know that we said we were gonna end the meeting at 9:30. I am leaving on a flight again, so we're moving early. Can we
Yeah.
try and keep it to an hour or something?
I'm hopeful to be done in half an hour. Okay, okay, so glass half full. So this is the capital budget, okay? It's a lot of money. And for me, it's hard to conceptualize. So I created this game. It's not really a game, but Monopoly money. Each of you have in front of you money that I created, specific. Everybody has their own color, but everybody has the same amount, okay? There are sort of two chunks. The first chunk is related to things that we, in prior decisions, that we have set on a motion, sort of money that is for projects that we've already blessed. And so that's things like the road work. Wait, okay, so that's things like redoing the sidewalk on Waverly, and it's things like the Barb, I'm at a loss. It's redoing the painting and fire alarm in Penn Place. It is a new truck for the crew. We're trying to renovate to get a new truck. And by the way, I just saw a grant. I got a grant today, looking at electric heavy duty trucks, federal grant. So we might be able to save some money. But so the other projects that we've already sort of blessed for this next year, or that we've been planning for and that are in the works, Yendel Grove and repairing the pool wall and assessing stormwater infrastructure. And we'll get to that in a second. And Cambria Park design. These are things that we've talked about, and we said these are things we want to do. Now, just because we have, it's not official that those are funded until we pass this budget. So what I have in your money is some odd amount pieces. So there's like a 60,000, there's like a 286,000, and these all correspond exactly to those things that Barb says, you know, we're going to be in a position to go ahead and do these. So I don't want to assume that just because we've previously blessed $70,000 to paint the interior and do new fire alarm for Penn Place, just because we've already said that, I don't want to assume you do have a $70,000 bill here, but I want us to kind of affirm the decisions or not, because you might disagree with doing the townwide assessment of a storm drainage infrastructure.
This is the third column from the right, right?
This is the FY 25 project costs.
Costs are proposed.
So do you see the
Proposed.
costs? Do you see, so there's the notes
Proposed.
column, which is on the far right, and then you have the estimated balance. The one before that is the project costs. Lisa, this is in the fold out.
Yeah, I haven't found this
So-
all out.
It's kind of tucked in there.
It's
It's
tucked
in
into
there.
the last page, it was the last page of
So
the set.
I just wonder though, when we pass the budget,
Should be-
we're
you
really
go.
deciding what increment to put into the capital account, not necessarily what we would expend out of those accounts. So my concern is if we focus on what we expect to spend, that is a little different than, say, setting aside money in an account that might be used in a future year.
Yes,
Okay.
to wit, the town hall renovation project only has 420 for next year, which makes sense as a design phase, but not as a construction phase.
Understood.
Just for the next.
Okay,
year.
so I sort of understand. So that I can finish, I'd like to finish my thought, not because.
Yeah, no, I
that I
wanna
can circle back
understand.
around to what.
Just wanna
So
understand.
the first idea here, not the first thing is asking the question, do we accept the items that we previously, but do we want to affirm those with projects that we've been working on and that are already planned? So we have money for that. Then the amount that we have left over is that last column, the estimated balance. And that is, at the bottom, you can see $1,985,000. So that is based on the proposed transfer increments that,
Okay.
so based on if we accept what the recommended budget transfer amounts are from, like what's left over after operating. If we look at those and we look at what we are proposing spending next year from capital, then what we have left over is $1,985,000. Sorry, Barb, go ahead.
Yeah, the only caveat I was gonna add, is obviously when you look at the unexpended balance, that is as of March 2024. I
Right.
tried to put notes, that show that projects that are, where we haven't been billed, for example, if you look at the bottom, under the capital accounts, ARPA 35.3D, facility utilities. This is showing because it was done at a point in March that there's $44,670 left. We actually paid an invoice in the amount of $42,170 in April. There's not that many of these. The community center project is one of them. That's up above at 27.4. As I put, we had a estimated balance now as of $99,830. That project is completed. I will know what the invoice is tomorrow.
But is that approximately,
It'll mostly be wiped out.
okay, so, all right, so
Yeah.
those two items, is there anything else? Because I know what to do with that.
Yeah, those are really the major ones. You'll see some residual projects that are complete under ARPA. I did want to just mention to you all, and I think I put this in an email I sent to you. I would focus on the projects, not worry about the funding source.
Right.
Because today was the bid submission deadline for kind of the mega bid that has paving, that has Kenilworth Argyle, that has the Waverly sidewalk. They just came in this afternoon at 2. They've been shipped off to our engineer. So basically, some of those projects I would probably recommend to you all be funded out of ARPA just to get the funding obligated. I'll work all that out. I think what's important, as Joanna is saying, is that you focus on what projects you want to undertake, not the funding source.
So,
Okay.
but with those two payments that you made, that means that instead of having our play money or, our leftover money as $1,985,000, it should really be $1,840,000.
Right.
Okay, so we need to get rid of $145,000
Out of the big chunk.
out of the big pile. So
The back file.
out of the thick pile.
So 100,
So 145,
145.
145,000, take out 100,
No cheating.
145. It's not gonna do any good to cheat.
1.84 out
You
of.
could end up spending more than others.
So in
Okay, so
grand
take out 145.
total, there's like 3.3 in your hand after that.
What's this? Okay, so I'm taking out 250s, a 25 and 210s. That's what I'm taking.
Hey. Hello.
Okay, all right. So in your small pile, it has the odd numbers. Those correspond with 2025 projects. And if there's no question about them, then we don't have to play the game. We don't have to, put money anywhere. But if there's question, if you're not sure that you want to spend $35,000 to repair the masonry wall, then we need to talk about that. But if we're sticking with what we've already said, then these correspond with other projects we've already done. Now, on the table, we have envelopes. Here, that look like this. These are library cards. These are like the back of library books. These are where the library cards went, okay? On the ones that are over there, they have the line items. So like there's one for 25.0 equipment. And if we affirm 75 that we want to buy a truck in 2025, well then grab a 75,000 and put it there. Okay. then,
75,000?
yeah, well, it's in the 2025 project cost.
For an electric
Okay.
truck.
So then if we now know, because we just took out $145,000, how much money we have left over. This is our play money, but it's not really. While there is a proposed level of starting 2025 with 75,000 for equipment and then spending it, leaving us with zero, just because that's what's proposed doesn't mean that has to be. So we don't have to necessarily leave $155,000 in item 28.2 storm drains for undertaking the cost of stormwater projects. We don't have to do that just because it's here. We just want to know how much money there's left over. And then based on our priorities, we can say, oh, you know what? I do want to put $100,000 here, $100,000 there. Now, you have a $1 million thing.
Yep.
Because, if we want to reaffirm having our $1 million or plus in with town hall, then we put it there. Does this make sense? So it's kind of like a get up and move around and.
All right, so the second larger group is for the increments to be added in the 25 budget. The
Yes.
first group is for the project to be expended. in
Yes.
25.
Right,
Okay.
This is a good, interesting exercise to figure out what each of our individual preferences are. I think at the end of that, if we decide to look at, how much is in each area,
Mhm.
and then discuss more from a more theoretical perspective.
correct, right.
Rather than just what our individual preferences are. But
I
this is a good first cut.
think that it is, these aren't exact numbers because I didn't want to make $62.
Yeah.
So these are rounded to the nearest 5,000.
Yeah, it will
So-
help us to hone in on where the points of discussion are.
Right, so, so if we get up and move, I'm not voting because I don't have a vote. And so I made my own money because I wanted to, but it's not my use. So we can get up and move around and do this. And if there's a question.
Quick
yes,
question.
please.
Does this total represent pretty much everything that's going to be available with capital, or is it separate from contingency?
Okay.
This assumes we're gonna spend everything,
So
Right.
not spend, allocate
allocate.
and
Yeah.
spend. So
Have to allocate.
this
Including
amount,
contingency.
so this amount, the amount in your hands is the projected cost of the things that we've already blessed, plus the amount that's left over that is in the capital sphere. And in most cases, as we've been done dribs and drabs, we put little bits here and there. It's all that, but without the strings. So we can affirm what we've done all along. We can affirm $63,000 for undergrounding the lights and the electricity in Penn Place. We can do that, or we can put it somewhere else. We can put every penny of this 1,840,000 into town hall, or not. We can put, you follow?
Would it be useful to decide, you have the lumps costs, you have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 or 10 projects that we've already discussed
Correct.
in amounts. If we as a group were to affirm or not those,
Right, then we
and
can,
then put the rest into the envelopes, would that?
it's the same thing. So we could either take your $75,000 card and put it into the slot for equipment as a visual of doing that, or we can say, everybody agrees with all of the column that says 2025 project costs, and we can just do that as a blanket and set aside these odd amounts.
But that doesn't let us trade them off against each other. Right?
If we don't approve them blanket and we want to move things around and want to not undo, and we want to reconsider the projects that are already in the works, then absolutely, we should not put them in there.
Okay.
Just for clarification, on the table, are we lumping together the 25 project expenditures and the increment additions, or are there two separate spots for those two things?
Okay, so the amount that Barb is proposing be available for 2025 is equal to the amount of the project cost. She is not
Right.
proposing there be anything left over. So if we support spending 75,000 for what's suggested of a truck for item 25.0,
Mhm.
then that's the only thing that would be in there, is each person's this, there's 75,000.
Okay, so they all go in one place, is what you're saying, the increment and the cost.
Okay, so, streets and curbs. She projects $286,000. We have a 286,000. There will still be 68,000. There will be, as currently allocated, 68,000 in that account. It would go in the envelope also.
Right.
Because that
But
would-
it could be reallocated. By not putting it there, we could be
Put it in
suggesting
another-
a reallocation.
Correct.
Can I
So,
ask, is stormwater in here at all?
there is, so in the project cost 2025, there is $75,000 for an assessment.
Okay,
This
do we
is-
know, have we gotten a bid for that? Do
So
we know?
this is, so Barb asked our engineers what it would cost. He said, it depends on what we want as an assessment,
Right,
whether it could be 50,000 or it could be 100,000 based on what we want.
so you just
And so
estimated a
that
number.
was an estimate. So
Okay.
we do not have that, but this is a good estimate.
We have a good estimate in these numbers.
It's
Yes.
just like
Okay.
splitting the difference.
Yeah, I understand. So we can put $75,000 in the stormwater
Yes.
assessment
Okay.
envelope.
So how about this? I'm
Is
gonna
that right?
pick, yes. So here's what I'm gonna pick these, at least this first set. All right. Let's do it.
We're off.
Or I can bring it to you. How about for this first set? I am.
I still need to come around and plug in my lap.
So equipment. You guys support $75,000 to buy a truck in 2021.
Yes.
Then give me 75,000.
Does the staff want a truck? Do we decide we needed a truck?
It's not out of your wallet. Okay, so you have a 75,000. I
No,
know.
but But if you'd prefer to like push it back to 26 or 27 and spend it on something else, then you don't.
Correct.
Do it.
Are you not listening? Would you want to support putting $25,000 for a, or 75,000 for a,
A new truck.
Hallelujah.
for a
Didn't we just buy it?
Make it rain.
We did.
So I get my 75.
No, we have two trucks.
Do you want us to just go around and do it?
So 26.2. We are projecting project costs for sidewalks in the amount of $286,000. Oh, is this one?
Is that Waverly?
Yes, so you support the $286,000.
Yeah. You want to strut size.
Does that include the lights and the planting? Can we have some more money for it? 'Cause we're gonna need lights and planting
Where,
and trees.
where's this number? This is the,
286.
286.
it's the third one down, or?
Yeah, all right.
Barb, the
next,
Wait a
estimate-
second.
is $176,000 for, sidewalks.
You just said that.
You
didn't
just
you?
said-
I'm sorry, that was supposed to be streets and curbs.
286.
Streets and curbs, right?
Yeah, what are the streets again for this contract?
Well, streets and curbs is 462.
No.
What are the physical streets?
I might have given you the wrong dollar. amount.
286.
No, okay, I have it right.
Yeah, okay.
Stephen, you wanted to know the streets.
Yeah, just in rough, like what are
It's,
the,
it's Kenilworth, Argyle to Waverly, Shelley, South End to Oxford, Cambria, Raleigh to the east end, as well as, concrete curbs and gutters where they don't exist.
So this is 176,000 in 2025.
Just makes it an
For
application
sidewalks.
problem, not a deliberation. question.
Anybody, I don't know about,
yes, we
Yeah.
put in streets, this would be sidewalks.
this is sidewalks, the previous was streets.
Hang on a second here. Where's my-
Okay, so 176.
So
Anybody else? 170?
do I have 176 chips?
There we go. Let me find it.
Okay. That's 476,000.
What do I do? Lay 'em out.
We already did this. I said it was sidewalks, but it was using first and maybe the. Oh, maybe the two meetings.
Oh, I already gave it to you. I thought I gave you Waverly.
Supported streets and sidewalks then.
Okay, so Lisa, I do not have yours. You support 176,000.
Yeah, but I don't see my little check. Oh, here it is, 176. There you go.
You support that?
Yes.
Okay. The next item on our list is 70,000 for painting the interior of Penn Place and replacing fire alarms. So this is item 27.1 for $70,000. I feel like we're at the auction.
You are.
All right,
I mean, she made.
did we hear that, yes?
Yeah.
Okay,
Are we, do you like this? We don't like this.
I don't know. I mean,
Do you want to?
if we need the fire alarms, we need the fire alarms. The painting, I don't know. Do we need the painting?
I think what has happened is,
It's the
since we
interior.
painted, since it's the interior,
Yeah.
we already painted the exterior, but we have painted the third floor. And now it's making the first and second floor.
Right.
We're not talking about the post office space. We're not talking about inside the restaurant. It's just making everything else look pretty shabby, quite
Right.
frankly, because everything else is spruced up.
All right,
Next item on our list is yellow. Now, this is for $286,000. However,
that's a lot.
250 of that, 250,000 of that is from the state.
A grant.
So while it is,
Does that not require a match? It does, doesn't it?
we've already put in a bunch.
Okay.
Is this correct?
Right, basically what this reflects is, you all had originally, we have originally had a town-based budget of 100,000. That's what's reflected in the grant. So basically, the state is picking up 250,000 of the cost, and we're picking up 100, of which a lot of it that's already been spent.
That's a good deal.
So we already have the money in our account.
Explain
Well,
that.
So
Yeah.
286, but 250 of that came from the state. So this is 286 for yellow.
So Barb, do we expect the additional?
But we already have
To
it.
get spent?
But you need our money even though you've already got two. You need
Right.
286.
But so why are we?
You have another one of these.
Well, this is
To get a rebate?
no, so this is a reimbursement.
No,
program.
This wasn't
So we have
state
to
money, it would
full
have to
expense.
be holding.
The road work, we spent the road work, 286, we had one for road work, we
Yeah.
spent that one already.
So
That's a
do
good.
I have two of them?
Not anymore. You have none now.
So I don't,
After 286.
well.
You
Phil
would
just
have
said
had
that I
two.
used it for something else.
Because
The
we-
road work
Oh, I did.
would have been one, and then you need the second one, whatever that.
Who did the graphics for these?
Me, I did it all.
Wow, that's good.
There you go, right there.
There it is.
Okay,
Okay,
that
there
appears to
you,
be your
you can
own.
have it. Okay.
286, so that's yellow. So
Good.
yellow, we're saying, okay,
So we're all funding everything.
So
well,
far.
So
So far.
far,
Next item is.
I didn't fund the truck.
35,000.
I would not have
for-
funded Yendel if it wasn't a grant. So
Me neither.
Okay, next item on the list is 35,000 for the pool wall, but it is listed in our account, in our budget as, other public spaces. So this is 29.12.
But
This
here's
is $35,000
Yep.
for repairing the.
so if
pool
I
wall.
give you 25 and 10,
You can.
okay,
There's gonna be a 35,000.
okay.
Yes.
But it doesn't,
Okay.
doesn't add.
$35,000 for the pool wall. Okay.
So we have to do.
All right.
that.
The next item is,
Oh, here I found the 35,000.
you can use it, which is probably
So look for
Membership?
75 next.
Okay.
The next item is, $75,000 for a townwide assessment of storm water, storm drainage infrastructure. And this is a planning thing, so 75,000.
I sat here with Jay McClintock and asked for this 5 years
This
ago
is-
with flatly no.
Well, now it's your lucky day.
Right, but it's to get an assessment and how do we know who's contracting that?
You
Here,
haven't done that yet.
It's an estimate.
Estimate that we got from engineers, that this is somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000, depending on what we want to do.
we need a scope of work for that. though.
I'm taking the 75.
Okay. Knock yourself out.
And then we've got, next item on the list is $60,000 for Cambria Park design. So this, let's see, this is listed under other.
Bigger than that.
This is,
And that includes the dog park and the playground and the whole thing.
It's the initial phases of,
But we're gonna get a community group together to tell us what they want first. Here's 60,000 for me and Steve.
Yeah, I think it's early for that, to pay for design services, because I think we
So-
need to do some,
Right.
we need to know what we want
Right.
first.
Right.
so remember that we're budgeting for the entire fiscal year, which will get us through June or May of 2025, so more than a year from now. So just because we budget for it now, doesn't mean.
We're
that
ready to
that
spend
we're-
it.
That we're gonna spend it, or that we're gonna go out and, you know, spend it tomorrow. It puts it in a placeholder. It says that within the next year, we will move to that point. And we have money set aside. If that's not what you wanna do.
And we might not need that much for it.
So if you don't want to make a commitment to making that progress in the next year, then don't put money.
Then we can
Okay.
spend it on something else.
Okay.
Right.
So Todd, Jerry, you're gonna.
I'm reserving that.
You're gonna reserve that? Okay,
Same.
so. You know, we got two of that. Oh, and the final item is, $420,000 for town hall.
But can we spend more than four
And
twenty?
it's coming out of ARPA, even though that is.
Spend everything else.
So this is, the amount that we think. Barb, remind me what this 420 is, please.
It's obviously an estimate. You haven't, executed a contract with an architect, but it's the cost we assume for design in our state funding application and our federal funding application, which is to basically get us to the point of, detailed design suitable for going through permitting.
Okay.
And bidding, right?
So.
Well, yeah, basically, but that's considered a construction cost, but yeah,
Yeah.
getting us to the point where we're able to at least bid out.
Okay.
500
So,
3 years.
This is what we think is going to be the projected cost of
But this is 5.
this next phase.
Can I ask a question though, Barbara? Does that include the 300,000 that we got from the state or whoever we got it from?
No, I
No.
mean, this is basically just strictly
which one is this one?
the anticipated expense cost for the detailed
that's-
design work.
So you haven't used
All
it,
right.
so we might not need it really if we have 300 already.
Well, just remember, there is a project shortfall on the construction side.
It's fungible, I mean,
The total is.
if we
If
contract
you
for,
take these out of it. You're
Okay.
left with 500. I
okay,
think it does. Yeah, no.
Eh,
Let's
well,
clarification. The total capital budget is almost 2 million, 1,985.
no. It's,
That's the amount we're given, right?
no,
3.469.
you were given that plus these that we've just been collecting. So these
Oh.
that we've been collecting are in addition to what's left over.
What's left over is 1,985.
Right.
So that's what we have here,
Yes,
that full amount?
yes. If
Really?
that would be withheld, yes, there's a $1 million bill. Unless you withheld from something else. So Lisa.
Yes.
This amount that is here, and I'm waiting for.
420
This is all.
for me.
No, I'm waiting for Steve.
For which one is?
For town hall.
Yeah.
420. Okay, so this is a bit of affirmation that during the 2025 fiscal year, we will move to the next phase and contract for the full design.
Unless I'm
That's what it
mistaken.
is.
But the 300,000 that we got from the,
Different thing.
so we don't need that for
We're not
this.
there.
Okay.
We're not there. Okay, so. What that leaves us. What's wrong? Sorry about that.
I was gonna say, it might be helpful, Joanna, if you can grab the mic so that anyone watching and the recording can pick it up.
Right.
I'm sorry.
1.5.
Let
This
me,
total.
all right.
Oh,
So what you have left,
okay.
so now that we've
Okay.
For the most part, or at least
Not so bad.
now that for the most part, we've affirmed the stuff that we've already set in motion, with some exception. What you have left is $1,840,000. That's what you
If we
have,
funded everything, some people didn't,
right?
right.
Aside from that.
right?
Right, so we get to keep and allocate what we reserve, right?
Except for that $144,000 that we
Right.
set aside.
Right.
Because we realized that was too. So now you have
All this money.
more than $1.8 million. And now we can talk through the things, some of Barb's thinking about places that she recommends that we put it, or put some of it. And then it's priorities. So a couple of the things that she recommended was putting 70,000 in streets and curbs, in addition to what we already put. Because we know that down the road, we're gonna have expenditures for streets and curbs. We know we're gonna have some big chunks needed down the road. So this is her recommendation, is to put a chunk in so that we can start planning ahead for needs that are coming down the road.
Ongoing maintenance of streets and curbs.
For maintenance for streets and curbs.
Yeah.
And so she threw out the number of 70,000 as as a solid number to get us started.
That is actually the estimate from Clark Azar for the streets that are anticipated to be done in FY 2027.
Right.
Which
But-
streets are they talking about for 2027? I feel like we're in good shape, and I'm worried we've gotten in a habit now that the streets went, from what I understand, were pretty terrible before I moved here, to now they're really
You're in good shape.
much better shape than the
So-
rest. Like,
So it could be that in 2027, they do an assessment and they say, oh, these are in better shape. We don't need to do this. You know, but setting aside the money so that whenever those streets are in need,
Mhm.
that we have the money there, that's a good idea. But the other piece is 2029 is approximately when, numbers wise or years wise, it would be projected, not to say the actual conditions on the ground. That's when we would need like, what, $900,000 worth of work?
It's about 700. So I think what will
Yeah.
happen is they came out and did an assessment. Obviously, road pavement conditions can either deteriorate faster or last longer, depending on what type of winter you have and freeze and thaw cycles and things like that. So just because something is anticipated to be done in a certain fiscal year, if it doesn't need to be done, clearly we won't do it. But to answer Stephen's question, FY 2027, it was the repaving of Keswick from the south end to Oxford, and basically also installing concrete curbs. That's part of that project.
So the gist is, in the next 5 years, we will have $800,000 of street work come
We're
due.
putting some money towards it
And-
now.
So one thought is to put money in that category, knowing we're not going to spend it this year, but let's start building that up.
So we're not.
And then so that
funding
we're
all
ready, so that if whatever is in 2027 is suddenly in awful shape and we have to do it a year early, well, we're ahead of the game. Or if it is in okay shape and we can put it off a year, but that we're prepared for it. Sorry, Bob.
Okay, here's my money.
No, I was just gonna follow up and, just to Jerry's question from your last meeting, and I did note it in the comments. Both sidewalk projects as well as, street projects are an eligible use for highway user funds. Jerry had asked about that. We are reserving those funds. We only have 1 year of that currently in reserve. Going off memory here, but it's like roughly $60,000. We'll reserve some additional funding at the end of FY 2024 and reserve some additional funding, but all those costs of highway user revenue for about 3 years will probably get us roughly to the $180,000 mark. That can also be used to help defray some of the anticipated sizable expense in FY 2029.
But that
You don't
is
have to worry
not,
about that now.
but that's not here. That's just to say, I threw out this scary number of $800,000 that we should plan to be ready for within the next 5 years.
And we have a few pots
We
for
might
it.
have, it might be not as dire as that. Point being, though, if we have money, we should start setting it aside. So we can either put money here, or we can go through all the other items, and then you guys can figure out where your priorities are. Do you want to affirm that one, or do you
That would
want
be
to?
best.
Let's look at.
Go
okay.
through.
Just
So-
a comment that may help on I think that's probably over exaggerating, and we're gonna have that much more due in 2029. I think a lot of times engineers in that field, they're gonna try to give you something that's a little bit worst case, so you don't take it too lightly and then you end up kind of expecting it's gonna go a lot longer and you get snagged. So
Well, so
I
I'm
feel
not
like that's a lot.
suggesting, I'm not suggesting that we put,
Eight
you know,
hundred.
$200,000 or $800,000 in today because of the worst case scenario, but just whether it's 800,000 over the next 5 years or 400,000, it's not gonna hurt us to put a good chunk now.
Except for the thing I think I was proposing last year with like looking at this capital budget differently is that you could start looking at, instead of just holding little pots of money and building them up, like trying to figure out what you really want to get accomplished. Put a lot more capital towards getting that done and then rely on the future years to kind of build up those other things that are falling in behind. That's what I worry about is this doing that way. It could be going back to the same thing. I think you called it spreading peanut butter, right? It's like
Okay.
and that's.
So, but that's why we're doing this exercise,
Yeah.
so that we can make that decision.
Okay.
Of course, that being said, remember that at some point we got to start, and if we're only 4 years out, right? Is that we're 5 years out essentially?
Right.
So essentially 5 years out. I mean, when do you start? Because the closer you get to it, now you're getting to the 150 grand that you got to throw down on it to make sure you got enough cash. So it's pay
But
me
that's
now or
why
pay me later.
that's why you guys are here. That's what I'm trying to get at, is
But
what direction to go.
But if you get a lot of other big things accomplished, then you have,
Right.
150, 300 coming in the next year's budget, and then one after that have a whole lot less of, big things to accomplish.
So there aren't a lot of things like this where we see a big need in the out years. So this is kind of a unique area in terms
that one's
of
a little different,
of suggesting sort of doing a little bit of a savings
Yeah.
plan. So the other areas are all the same ones that we already talked, well, most of the same ones we already talked about. Penn Place, after this 70,000, it's probably gonna be in good shape. We probably won't need anything else for Penn Place. So let's not put anything, your choice to put money there, but if we don't have any need coming up beyond next year, then let's not put any there. I want to skip town hall just for a second. I don't want to, I'm not minimizing it. I just want to skip it for the second.
Bigger one, yeah.
Barb says that, let's see, her note is 10,000 needed in 2026 for fencing replacement at the south end of Montrose Avenue and Claremont Avenue. So to Steve's point, it's $16,000. We can set that money aside so that it's there, or we can put it somewhere else and assume that when we look at 2026.
And the fence fell
And
down
find
at the end of Kenilworth too, on my street in front of my house. It fell down, but okay.
So that 10,000, I'm not ready yet, is the question of, do we want to set it aside now? Or do we want to just know that it's there and have it in our minds that a year from now, we're going to have the same conversation of, or not same, but we have this need and it'll be, at that point, we'll fund it. So, okay, other items, there is, other things that are coming up. Depending how things go with storm drainage, that may be a need. Do we want to set money specifically aside for that, or do we want to not?
Over and above the assessment.
Correct. Again, don't want to talk about it, but then. So I guess that's kind of it, like the rest is just where our priorities. So
I would like to
So-
flag that right now we have a large amount listed under contingency.
Is that a large amount or?
284,000, that's quite large.
Is it,
We parked it there last year wanting to have some flexibility.
what if there's a big problem? Isn't that what it's for?
We also have our contingency reserves. That's not the right word for it, but it's in the reserved account. We've boosted that in recent years.
Isn't that the operating reserve?
The
versus
operating reserve, which
Yeah.
is 250,000.
Yeah.
That's our rainy day fund.
Yeah, I think when we did budget amendment 2, I believe it was, part of the thinking at the time was just simply to provide you all some flexibility, particularly with the uncertainty surrounding the whole stormwater issue.
And then how much is in the investment fund and where is that? in the budget?
that's a second.
That's simply,
It doesn't, is it?
it's, basically it's basically how we use our cash to basically get investment income.
So essentially,
So some of
During
the
the
capital,
year.
some of that reserve money, there's capital money,
Correct.
it's sitting in investment.
So it's not, there's no allocation for.
so there's no,
Investments, long-term investments.
no. So the things that
Nice.
Barb is projecting as having needs beyond 2025 are streets and curbs, a small item for replacement of fence, and storm drainage, if we want to save up for that, and town hall. And aside from that, I mean, those are the things that are like, you know, beyond this coming year.
And we have a lot of money.
And we have a lot of money.
Right.
So while it is a lot of money, it's kind of less important, the absolute number as it is like, okay, so do we want, you know, of the $1,840,000, how much of that $1,847,000 do you want to put into what, you know, into the different things, the different categories?
That are left.
Okay. That are, it's not that are left, but that are there, just
Well,
of
it's
all the
other
things.
than what we've already funded in the envelope.
But if
You
you
could add to
think
that.
You can
that,
add to those.
but if you think that we need to put a new balcony and a whirligig on the top of Penn Place that cost $80,000, even though we've never talked about it, you could put $80,000 in the Penn Place. We're not, that wasn't abstract enough.
What about the possibility of indeed trying to put much of the money into the town hall improvement, but also at the same time pledging not to seek external forms of financing for that? In other words, put what we have into that account, but then also not proceed to extend, you know, to leverage ourselves as a community.
To
Okay,
do a bond. you're
Yes.
saying.
okay,
I would like to
so,
link those because, you know, I feel like next year and the year after, we're gonna have to deal with this as well. And if we sort of have a commitment to expend what we can, but also not exceed our bounds with what we can reasonably spend without borrowing,
okay.
I would be very pleased with that.
So are you suggesting taking the $1,840,000 and putting your $1,840,000 all in town hall
I think
renovation?
I'm trying to see if we can, as a group,
Okay,
reach
but
some
that's,
sort of agreement
okay,
about that.
That's kind of like the whole point, isn't it? To see
right.
like how you would want to do it. If you want to do that, if all of us want to do that, that means you can't really do much with anything else beyond what was already there. So
Right.
Yes.
You're kind of holding everything else pat for
Right.
probably 2-3 years.
And
I mean, I'm in favor in adding more to the town hall pot, absolutely, so that we're not just waiting on other grants or assuming that we're going to take on debt.
Right.
But I don't feel like I have enough information to say for sure that we would never take on debt, but I think we should keep trying to fill that gap. I'm just not in a position to say, yeah, definitely going to commit no debt.
sorry, Bob.
Yeah, I'm the
If
same
that's
way. I would,
a
that'd be,
I've been
that's like
saying
a pledge.
I asked for clarification on something Todd said. When you say external funding sources, and this is relevant because.
Grants or
need
external
borrow.
funding sources.
Okay, good. I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
because-
You meant debt.
Well, I got it.
I just mean borrow.
Okay, that's what I
Can
want to
I,
clarify.
can I clarify something about borrowing? So if we do a bond sale, we amortize some debt over 25 years and we have a source of that money in terms of additional revenue that we've talked about from
Yes.
black market and taxes and what other things, and it won't cost the town residents more money to pay the bonds. I would be willing to commit to that.
Except that, so you're saying we wouldn't need to raise our interest rates, I mean, our taxes for that purpose of repaying that.
Correct.
However, by taking out a loan,
We'll have less money for other things.
we'll have less money for other
Right.
things. So it's the
Yeah.
absolute, you know,
Correct.
absolute sense that
Right.
is costing us more.
The
because we're
opportunity.
Unable to do other things. So right now, we only have $420,000. We only have next year, we have no construction money allocated for town hall.
And not the
Um,
grant. 300,000.
Correct. So I want to bring up, only 2 people supported putting funds in a Cambria Park design for 2025. And I guess that is an important thing to me. So I would like to know,
What do you want to
like
spend money on?
why, or not what do you want instead, but like we said at the retreat that renovating Cambria was a priority. So if it is a priority, by not putting money in for a design to happen within the next 14 months, we're saying that it's not a priority.
No, we're just saying we're gonna figure out what to do with it from the ground up, rather than hiring consultants to, you know, sort of design it before we have an idea of what citizens want, right?
Not
I
exactly.
disagree.
Right. I think we're
Um,
saying we're gonna place the money in a pot holder as a priority, but we've said that we're still gonna talk to the community about what they want
Yeah.
before we actually spend the money on the consultants to design the park.
But this is not, this is, well,
I've done this before, like in projects in New York City, DC, I guess Maryland too, as the consultant. And it's kind of how it works. You get a consultant, can figure out what can really work technically. You can figure out what really are the trends. You kind of like suss through what you're hearing from the community. It's not all done in isolation from the community. I remember doing a rec center in 59th Street in Manhattan. I must have gone to 20 different community meetings
well, just like.
and a
town hall,
huge amount of
we did
community
it
input. So I think there's a major disconnect
How many
here.
votes are in there?
too.
I mean, I think that's true, but
Mhm.
in this case, in the case of town hall, we had a pretty good idea. There had been a lot of years of charrettes and discussions before we hired the architects to help us with the conceptual designs. I really think that in the year of 2025, we could do a lot without consultants to get a better sense of what we want and what kind of design services we really would want to hire and therefore potentially save money. But also, I'm going to be clear, at the retreat, I was actually not one of the people who was in favor of
Sure.
making Cambria Park a priority. I do think that town hall is a bigger priority in 2025. And so I would rather not commit funding, but I do think that we could, without expending design fees, make progress in 2025 on Cambria.
So I don't think it takes a year to gather information and to get a sense of what the town wants to do in anything. So,
It's taken, oh, what, 5 or 10 years for this place? I mean,
okay,
it's
but
been-
just.
So
But it
so
hasn't.
the idea would be to gather sentiment and figure, functionally, we need to know, who wants a basketball court? Who wants a
Absolutely.
kickball, volleyball?
It is,
tetherball?
it is
We don't
merely,
even know what we're doing.
absolutely, right, just like we don't know what kind of truck we're gonna buy, or, you know,
Well,
other things.
It's a
But
little different. I mean,
it-
the
it-
truck is marginally
Okay.
different, but the.
it's a commitment to make progress, and if we get to the point of hiring somebody to do some element of something, then we have the funding there. Now, we have funding. I mean, if we decide, even if we don't fund it, I think that to me, it's a mental commitment to pursue this and to not. Well, it is a commitment to.
It's a
preserve-
priority
It's
to
a
move the
priority.
project forward.
To move the project forward.
All right.
But-
I'm gonna put in
Okay.
there.
Okay, well, I would still say that even if we move the project forward, we still don't have any money for it yet because
Okay, but we have $1.84 million. So to say that we don't have money is I would say
Well,
not.
wait a second, but I thought, where's the money from town hall? Like I see,
Well, that's this money.
right. And so basically we're taking away from that money. We could be putting that 60,000 towards town hall.
Right.
Because we don't know what we're gonna get into. We don't know what we don't know. I mean, we have to
Okay,
anticipate.
We'll get a plan and we'll put it on the back burner till we finish town hall. But at least we'll know more with that expenditure.
I 100% disagree, though. I don't think that we need to limit ourselves to just making one part of the town better. I think that we can start moving ahead on other things as well. And that,
We have plenty of money to do it all.
and so our choice, so yes,
How do we have plenty of money to do it
So
all?
we have $1.84 million.
Right,
so-
but,
Town hall needs 4 million total.
right.
It
and-
doesn't. Okay,
Not for
so
this
then,
year.
so then, no, we're not asking about this year, though. We're asking, like, this is leftover
Right,
money.
it's building up capital.
This is building
Foreseeable
up.
future.
Okay,
Okay.
so if what you want is, and I'll bring this around, how much of what you have left in your pocket do you want us to set aside for town hall? if you, I mean, that. So I guess that's one question, but related to that is, do you want to set aside some for streets and curbs? Do you want to set aside some for, let's see, what do you call it? The community center at some point is going to need a new playground. It maybe it's sooner, in 5 years.
So
Do you
is
want-
this increment amount for that future expenditure? I thought Barb said at the outset that this was money that actually got spent this year and that, so that
Which-
that actually.
Which one are you looking at?
The community center line item. I thought that was actually going to be zeroed out more or less.
It will be-
Yes.
yeah.
What
So
got spent
that,
this
that
year.
money that we took out just a few minutes, the 145, that was that one.
Right, so there's not actually a recommended from Barb amount for the community center because that's an out year 2029
Yeah, so now, yeah,
Estimate.
2029,
for the playground.
what I've discussed with the nursery school, and as a reminder, under their current lease, they actually pay 50% of the cost of the playground.
Right.
My hope would be to, also look, explore some state grant funding that there is a specific funding source for playgrounds. So I think it's just a little bit unknown at this
Okay.
point, but we have to basically show the full $75,000, which is kind of on the lower end of a playground, I'll be honest with you. We'd show the full expense, and then whatever the nursery school would contribute would come in on the revenue side. But keep in mind that basically our cost would be 50% of that.
And your
75,000.
estimate is in 2029.
That's correct.
So, so a couple things. First of all, I was hopeful it was gonna be that we would get this done by 9:30, is almost 10. And if we're not going to be able to make this decision tonight, then I would say let's hold off if we think we can get close, not decision, but kind of, like enough people going in the same direction, broad direction, whether that be put all of it in town hall, whether that be put all of it in sidewalks, because we suddenly want to put stripes on our sidewalks, whatever. Like, if we don't have a broad of that, then we need to know that on the sooner side so that Barb can incorporate it into the documents for us to adopt in 2 weeks.
For the
I mean,
budget.
could I recommend that we actually just go and put our
Yeah.
dollars out on the table rather than trying to achieve consensus one by one?
Absolutely,
And-
I feel
absolutely.
like that might kind of loosen things up a little bit.
So, but if there are questions about what the different areas refer to, we can answer those. But yes, you're welcome to come.
Can
back
I
with us.
ask a question with regard to town hall? We've got $1.1 million in the estimated balance. Where is that going to come from? In other words, do we have to use this 1.9 we have?
So if you want to, if these are just numbers based on where things currently are, what we're going to spend, because there is a
So-
particular amount
So if
in
we
our.
don't put 1.1 million, we're actually taking away from what has been advertised as what we've set aside for town hall.
Yes.
think that's an
My
important-
question, it's the same, put 1.1 of that in there. If you think it should be more, put more of that in there. If you think it's less, then
So,
less of it.
so in order for it to look to be what we say that we have currently. But I mean, but
Yeah.
it's an affirmative thing to say, yes, we want to continue down this path. So if that's what you want to do, is to affirm that the 1.1 that we've, add to the 420, and then to put that there, and then whatever additional you want, put that there too.
Can I,
So, yeah.
can I bother us kind of give just a little bit of perspective on this building, just from my experience with it? I guess that's a no.
It's kind of a no, just because
It's late.
it's late, but also. I mean,
Could we instead try and reach?
well, let's,
I can make it
consensus among
super
us? Can
fast.
we See if we agree?
Well, I think,
mean, rather than just aggregating.
I'm not talking about my
Um,
personal view from this building on what to do with it for the future. I'm talking about my experience as an architect working on it for the last, what has it been, like 10 years? And I could keep it super short. I think
Please.
the thing I noticed in this town is that there's always this idea that, like an outsized idea that we need to rely on like all this collective expertise in town. Like I enjoyed putting together the charrette that I did in 2018. Remember being kind of people looking at me like I had three heads for suggesting getting rid of the addition on the front, but eventually that's kind of what it coalesced around. I was just thinking about it yesterday, like I could have predicted as a professional in this field, I could have predicted what our scope was. And I really did in like 2018, 2019. The only thing that's kind of surprised me that's changed in that whole thing is that Greg Weidman did not want to did not think we needed an exit door through there. I'm really hard pressed to think of much else that's different. So I think a lot of this kind of stuff, if you get the right kind of people that know what they're doing about this stuff, they can really kind of coalesce things that make a lot of sense. And it's always good to get that extra like little input for things those people won't know from people in the town. But I think I've seen it for far too long in this town, what's almost seen like it has to work in backwards. And I think that's why nothing gets done in this town.
So you're saying you're arguing in favor of more external expertise?
Not more extra, well, the appropriate level, but just more trust in it. And like when I've seen projects be successful in the back, you kind of, you get added things.
Yeah, I
Right.
appreciate, I appreciate what you're saying. I think that that's not as directly what we're trying to accomplish right now
Mm.
as I would like,
Okay.
given the hour.
All right.
So if you'd like, I mean, following Jared Lee's suggestion, if you guys want to come up and rather than put them in the envelope, because we already kind of know what's in the envelope, put it like next to that or underneath the envelope for where you want to put your funds. individually.
Underneath the
Yeah.
envelope.
The rest of the
The
money.
rest of your.
The rest of it.
And then we'll have a discussion
so
about
let's-
this at
let's-
some point.
And do you have all the things on Barb's list up there?
Yeah, I mean, everything that we, of things that are on the horizon,
Okay,
or that might be on the horizon. We can add another envelope if you'd like.
This includes state funding.
I don't-
300,000, it does not.
I don't, or the ARPA money,
So-
it's not sources of
The
money.
ARPA.
So
Right.
1.1
This is
billion.
town funding.
Yes, but 1.1 billion is what we've advertised as the portion of this 1.8
Okay.
that is for town.
So kind of to stay the course, it would be 1.4, but really 1.1 on the table.
To stay the course, you're putting 1.1 under town, to stay the course.
I think all total it was like 1.9-ish, right? Like if you put it in state.
Including state funding,
Okay, including design fees.
right, but for right now, I'm just going with the 1 point, well. What other open space is referring to. That is the fund where we're putting money for making wall, for the pool. So there's not, in that sense of other public spaces, it's not one of those, it's not, if you want to put something for, kind of like, you want to do something at Grotto, put some money, or if there's something we cannot talk about. And that's where we get
Where are the grotto?
Grotto with those.
It's like if it's not identified as a problem, then.
She told me to put it next to it. Well, just near it, so that there's not. And what are utilities? So that is, we have, for the last several years, had this fund, and I don't know if we've had anything in this year. But
no.
it's set aside for the idea of moving the electrical poles in the Penn Place parking lot under the ground. So that is. That's what it's.
I just wanted to call to everyone's attention, look, we currently, like, if we add new street lights or we go to have to replace lights on Strathmore, that's sort of what we use those funds for.
So that utilities.
Right,
Oh.
so we don't have any other funding source for those activities.
So a rate
Well, we still need to move the poles, so putting it under there is a good idea.
So,
The Strathmore lights.
so in addition for utilities, it would
Oh, wow.
also, it would encompass, a savings for if there are new poles that we need to get or any other money. We just bought four poles. Yeah, but that doesn't. But that's, so that other maintenance.
Okay.
Other. Is this. We're looking at potentially putting them aside for replacing events in 26. That was the replacing events. If you wanted to say, put on these sites for that.
Replacing the
Replace.
fence. Oh, the one that
And
was mentioned,
no, it's on Montrose. But again, that's not necessarily something that needs that we're currently planning to do, or we could in 25. It's not currently in the works.
Well, okay.
Take the leftover and realize how.
Yeah, that's what I did. I mean, as opposed to all those, I put a little money in all that other.
I just put under streets and roads, storm drains and town hall.
Good.
I don't know.
I don't know either. But nobody knows.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do with this? Look
Well,
at who- what colors
I'm gonna look
everybody?
at, I'm gonna look this really quick and then, come up with that thing. But not necessarily anything right this minute.
But you're gonna see how because each
Yes.
person got the same amount of money, so you have different colors.
Right.
Okay.
So this is.
How the
I
priorities,
can't say that I have an immediate plan, but I'm really one in front.
but you're gonna look at the priorities based on who they are and how much money they put up for each
So,
thing.
Expect that what will be needed is a synthesis of this,
You want to, someone to start counting?
not necessarily. But could you,
Over there.
could you engage, could you respond to some emails?
Well, yes.
Like that would allow us to meet and.
After Sunday, yeah. Supposed to be used.
Can you do, no.
Oh,
Today's Thursday,
Yeah.
or
So that's why.
Friday, so Sunday, early next week.
I want. Yeah.
Yeah, can I ask one other question?
You don't want people to count really quickly. Other open spaces, let's all. I'll see that.
It's like I-
If this could be, solar water. It's over. Where's the? It's gonna be, that's gonna be divided by 5. We don't need money in the parking lot.
Whatever is kind of like any other things.
We were like paying them to let us keep the post office in there. And it's nice. And they pay us.
And
Okay.
if that's gonna be.
Sure, so in other words.
So what I'm proposing is that as soon as we've allocated our funds, I want,
What does it does.
margin. So I'm gonna ask that if you have to synthesize this in the next few days.
It's flat. It's flat.
Yes.
Let me go back.
And then
Also, I mean, you can always reallocate if there's problems somewhere. And the reason for the utilities, is the reason I was thinking of putting money there was to, move the poles.
Oh, I see.
That place out of the way.
So you don't want
Yeah.
But they were planning to show that these institutions, the architect said, but it's never about the state house. Possibly.
every year. Did anybody else, the principal?
See, I put it in the sidewalks.
Okay, so. Okay, so how much, let me get it on, and we can put it.
Yeah, we could add it to.
That is a good one.
That is a significant oversight.
Yeah.
What number is contingency?
Contingency, 33.
33.0?
Now we don't have that.
Well, that's a big oversight.
Theory, it's still. Okay, but fine, if you go in just when you have. So we've got to pay for other applicants.
And everybody should be forward.
Well, more people, you know. I get it. Sorry. Yeah.
I think I just need to.
I thought there was a lot of
Think this now.
Right.
So.
You're zeroing it out.
So you want me to?
So we're not.
You put on, did you want?
Okay.
So. Okay.
Okay.
So make sure you do that. Okay, so so real quick, so what I'm gonna do is after you guys are done with your money, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna flip it together and do all that stuff, and take it home with me so I can synthesize this. And I will send an email to each of you, so that we can try to finalize and say, hey, these are the areas where we have disagreement, these are the areas that we need to continue to, come to consensus. So if you could plan early next week to get back to me, get back to Barb with whatever I send to you, that would help. Early next week.
And so we can make our final decision at the meeting, the regular scheduled budget meeting.
The hope would be that we could come up with, get close to a final, like get a conceptual thing beforehand so that Barb can do the numbers. That would-
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. So.
So I'm going to adjourn.
Oh, we need to get back to our.
This will be very quick. Can everyone just get to their mics? Because I just want to confirm something with you all. Todd, I promise I
Sorry, we need to sit down real
you
quick.
all answer quickly. You'll be out of here. Look at each flip.
Okay.
All right.
This might be useful next year.
So I actually,
Okay.
apparently I printed up.
Oh. That's for your kids. Use that.
Joanna, can I go?
Kids will have monopoly money for,
Joanna.
that's our
Well,
excess.
everyone's settled. So I think
I'll
everyone's.
give them to Brandon.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, when we
Okay.
first started this agenda item, I'm gonna be basically going back and reviewing, both the revenue projection for FY 24, FY 25, same thing on the expenses. We've already talked about the fact that there, if we resolve everything with black market or is there anything from the county at a minimum, there will be some additional revenue, which will basically flow through and mean there's more money for capital. Would it be a safe assumption on my part that if more money becomes available to transfer to capital, do you want that additional funding to go to town hall? Is that a good assumption for me to make?
Sorry, which additional funding?
So if there's additional funding that comes from, like, if we have a final,
Can I give a simple
if we have a
example?
new
Joanne?
contract.
So
for-
let's say we get 29,000 from the county for tax duplication, which would raise our revenues, which then means there's $29,000 more to go over to capital. Do you want that 29,000 as I'm trying to bring this all together for May 13th? Do you want that additional 29,000 to go to town hall?
I do.
Is that a safe assumption?
It's fine, small amount, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
So any new revenue sources that show up, whether it's that or black market.
Right.
Goes to town hall.
Sounds like they would be
Transfer to
like the
capital.
5-digit numbers. They wouldn't be 6-digit numbers.
No.
Correct.
It would not be.
Okay,
Okay,
so,
that's all.
my plan is I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna synthesize it, write it down, like share it, okay?
Thank you for this process. I found it a helpful way for us to,
Yes.
conceptualize how we were allocating the budget. It's hard for us to get used to because it's a new concept, but, I found it very useful. So thank
One
you.
question that I have though is, are we agreeing that the amount of the contingencies in these different pocket contingencies money should stay the same, or do we want to reduce that somewhat and move it to the town hall?
So I think, well, this is a good question to answer really quick. So far, I had forgotten to make a contingency. And what we had
Right.
projected or suggested was a lot different than what was want.
Okay.
So we got,
I'll go over it with you, Joanna, after.
right, but actually it is it's not, there's not $250,000 a year. Nobody wants $250,000.
Okay.
It's gonna be closer to $100,000 more than this.
Okay.
So just,
Like the average of that.
I'll share that in.
So technically, then that different, the delta between what's in your budget proposed and the amount in the envelope could potentially go to town hall.
Right, and I think the other thing I'll just note, and Todd, you need to, all you probably want to get going. As I mentioned, we received bids today. They went over to Jason. I kind of spent some time between once they went over to Jason and before I came over here, just kind of looking at them. Some of the bidders I know, some of them I'm not familiar with. Jason, certainly has more knowledge than I do. There is a wide range of bids that Jason will be sorting through this weekend. That may change some of what is anticipated for FY 2025, and it could be in a positive direction. I mean, so anyway, I just wanted to share that with you.
But we still need money for lights and trees.
Right, that's all part of the Waverly sidewalk budget, but yeah,
Okay.
that will be on top of basically what this contract
What-
award is.
You've got money for that.
Yes,
Okay, good.
So there's no way to do this in actual, there's no way we're gonna know how much we'll actually have the first day of the fiscal year. So at some point, we have to say, a decision is made before then.
Yeah,
But we can always adjust the budget.
right. The only other thing I'll just mention, and I'm trying to scroll through it, is right as I sat down here and while Kayla was doing her thing, I got an email from Congressman Raskin's office. They have opened up their funding application portal. And applications are due by either Monday or Tuesday of next week. The House has different rules on their available funding source. The program that we apply for on the Senate side, which is the Saving America's Treasures. The House has decided they are not funding that program, so I'm
At all.
at all. I am waiting to hear back from Congressman Raskin, that person, to see if there is any other funding category that the House has chosen to fund that we might be eligible for.
From the state.
This is from this is from
Feds.
Congress. This is on
The
the, yeah.
Congress.
So it's looking a little grim based on the quick
Right.
scroll I did, but I'll be able to tell you more about that. Certainly by Tuesday, 6 o'clock, if it's a deadline.
All right, move to adjourn.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are adjourned at 10:15. Thank you all
Thanks,
for
Sitting back.
playing this game with me.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna comment.
I will share.
That was a good exercise. Thank you. There was a lot of work for you.
Yes, it came out well.
Did it?
It worked. It was good. It was good. Very good.